Chapter 931. The treasure ship was a common tool used to communicate between the overseas training world and the central training world. At the same time, it was also a necessary way to pass through the stormy ocean that separated the two realms. At the same time, it was also the only way to set up a long-distance teleporter. For the overseas large sects to be recognized by the entire training world, other than having at least 2 Dharma adepts and at least 10 third-generation Dharma adepts, the most important thing was for the sect to have the ability to communicate between the two realms. Only then would it be possible to be recognized by the central training world and even the entire training world. All these requirements would be focused on one thing, and that was the treasure ship. And the treasure ship was not only a reflection of the heritage of a sect, but more importantly, it was a symbol of the status of a large sect. According to what Lu Ping knew, a treasure ship had to be at least 140 feet long and 400 feet wide. These were just minor details. The key was that the shell of the treasure ship had to be at least an upper-grade ritual weapon made from top-grade spiritual materials. The use of the keel of the treasure ship had to be at least at the level of a magic weapon, or even higher. In addition, the other important parts of the treasure ship needed to be above the level of a top-grade ritual weapon. The upper-grade ritual weapon used on the shell was the most inferior part of the treasure ship. There was a space in the key parts of the treasure ship. Some rich sects might directly embed a treasure grotto heaven in it. If they could not, a space grotto heaven at the level of a ritual weapon could be supported. However, compared to a treasure grotto heaven, there was naturally a big difference. The treasure ship of the failing sect obviously did not embed a treasure grotto heaven in it. This was not to say that the failing sect did not have the ability to create a treasure grotto heaven, but the requirements to embed a treasure grotto heaven on the treasure ship were far greater than the requirements to embed a treasure grotto heaven at the level of a ritual weapon. And in this grotto heaven, the most important thing was to be able to accumulate a large spirit vein to create a false earth vein. When the treasure ship traveled in the sea, when it resisted the wind and waves, and when it passed through the dangerous environment of the stormy ocean, it needed a large spirit vein as a source of power. In addition, there were 3 other important factors. The first was to have a Dharma adept. This was a prerequisite for the treasure ship to be able to pass through the stormy ocean. It was also the key factor for a treasure ship to be used as a deterrent. It was also the reason why a large sect needed at least 2 Dharma adepts. At the very least, one of them could stay in the sect and the other could guard the treasure ship. The second was a master of arrays. From the outside to the inside, there were countless runes engraved on the treasure ship. The entire treasure ship could be said to be an independent space of arrays. This was an important way to defend against enemies, and also an important indicator of the quality of the treasure ship. One of the most important reasons why the outer shell of the treasure ship had to be assembled with high-grade spirit materials was to be able to withstand the huge force generated by the activation and operation of the entire treasure ship formation. Secondly, it was to resist all kinds of dangers that might be encountered during the voyage. The third was the artifact spirit of the entire treasure ship. With the existence of an artifact spirit, cultivators could save a lot of true essence when driving the treasure ship on the sea. It could also adjust the resources of the spirit veins in time, and it could also help the array formation master coordinate the activation of the treasure ship's array formation. The third was the spirit of the treasure ship. With the existence of a spirit, it could save the cultivator a lot of Jinyuan when driving the treasure ship on the sea. It could also adjust the resources of the spirit vein in time, and it could also help the master of arrays coordinate the activation and operation of the array of the treasure ship. The outer shell of the treasured ship was covered with mud from the seabed. Even though the majority of the outer shell had reached the level of a high-grade magic tool, and many parts had even reached the level of a top-grade magic tool, it could be seen that many places had already been severely corroded. Most of the runic patterns carved on the outer shell had already become blurred. The shell of the treasure ship was covered with mud from the bottom of the sea. Although most of the shell had reached the level of a top-grade instrument, and some of them had even reached the level of a top-grade instrument, many parts of the shell had already been severely corroded. most of the array inscriptions on the shell had become blurred. The treasure ship was tilted to the right and leaned against the bottom of the cliff. On land, the divine sense of a cultivator who had just advanced to the core forging stage could cover a radius of 100 feet. On the other hand, the divine sense of an early Dharma adept could cover a radius of 10 miles. An ordinary adept who had just reached the blood condensation stage could probably use his divine sense to cover a radius of 100 feet on land. An adept who had just entered the core forging stage could use his divine sense to cover a radius of 100 feet. An early Dharma adept could use his divine sense to cover a radius of 10 miles. Lu Ping's divine sense was far more powerful than others and was comparable to a mid-Dharma adept. If he used his divine sense on land, he could detect any movement within a radius of 20 miles. However, at the bottom of the sea, Lu Ping's divine sense could only reach a maximum of 3,000 feet due to the pressure and isolation of the sea. This meant that he could barely scan the surface of the treasure ship. Lu Ping hid at the edge of the cliff for 2 hours and did not discover any other Mara returning. At the same time, he did not discover any fluctuations from Mara who was at or above the Dharma stage. In the end, he concluded that this was probably the nest of one of Mara's armies. No Mara at the Dharma stage appeared. Perhaps their leader had been killed in the battle on Frost Island, or perhaps they were being chased by the Dharma adepts of the human and demon races of the North Sea. They did not dare to return to their nest not too far away from Frost Island. In the end, Lu Ping decided to explore the treasure ship. If not for the fact that Lu Ping's level of cultivation had increased, the pressure at the bottom of the sea would have been enough for Lu Ping to use the water moon pearl. However, in order to not expose himself, Lu Ping could only use his inner yuan and physical body to resist the water pressure. Fortunately, Lu Ping had an idea and used the cloud sail to cover his body. Otherwise, it would have been a torture for Lu Ping's inner yuan and physical body. However, Ru Yu had previously told Lu Ping that before the treasure ship sank, Fei Ling's ex-Laozu had already collected most of the treasures that could be taken from the treasure ship. The treasure ship had been submerged at the bottom of the sea for 4,000 years. Even if there were any treasures left, they would have been corroded and rusted by the seawater. What's more, because of the large spirit vein in the middle of the ship, this place had obviously become Mo Luo's lair. With Mo Luo's nature of devouring spirits, Lu Ping's initial sliver of hope vanished without a trace. However, Lu Ping still decided to go in and take a look. Just this large spirit vein alone was worth Lu Ping going in to investigate. Moreover, now that there was no blood Shura here, this made Lu Ping even more daring. Although the main body of the treasured ship was assembled from numerous high-grade and top-grade magic treasures, many of the key parts were magic treasures of the magic treasure level. Especially the dragon bone. According to Ru Yu, it was a large magic treasure that had condensed 3 treasure restrictions. Lu Ping checked many cabins in the treasure ship and found that it was really as Ryu said, there was almost no harvest. He couldn't help but feel a little disheartened. However, he also found that the interior of the treasure ship was mostly maintained intact. At the same time, it hadn't suffered too much damage from Mara. This made Lu Ping very happy, and he secretly felt very lucky. Although Mara was soul-devouring, magic treasures usually condense 4 treasure barriers, and reach the level of psychic magic treasures would only give birth to a weak spirituality. Similarly, it would also attract Mara's attention. And ordinary magic treasures were usually called spirit-breeding magic treasures. Their spirituality was not obvious at all, so they wouldn't attract Mara's attention. Therefore, the shell, keel, and most of the cabins of the treasure ship were preserved to the greatest extent. Lu Ping checked the remaining cabins while sinking his divine thoughts into the golden house to ask Ru Yu, "Do you know who injured this treasure ship when it sank?" Ru Yu shook her head and said, "I can't remember. But it seems that the formation plate of the treasure ship had a problem first, which greatly reduced the power of the formation outside the treasure ship. Then the left side of the treasure ship was pierced, and the golden house was broken. The person who sneaked up on me seemed to be targeting me, but Zhongju and Laozu appeared in time and saved me. However, When I was taken away by Zhongju and Laozu, the treasure ship didn't seem to sink completely. Oh, Lu Ping said. This is too much of a coincidence. Obviously, Fei Ling sent out a mole, and they cooperated with each other to sink the treasure ship. Ryu nodded and said, It should be so. After Zhongju and Laozu brought us back to Fei Ling's sect, he handed it over to Zhongshuan Laozu and Jiao Yuqiang to repair it. But not long after, Jiao Yuqiang laid down a big formation in the Spirit Stone mine and secretly placed me there. It has been 4,000 years since then. If Master didn't appear in time, I'm afraid that Ruyu's spirituality would have been exhausted and disappeared. These days, Ruyu had recovered more than half of her memories. Although she had forgotten a lot of her previous memories due to the erosion of her spirituality, she had also recovered a little. She also remembered a little about the situation when the treasure ship sank, but there were still many key points that she couldn't remember. Even if Ruyu completely recovered her memory of 4,000 years ago, she probably couldn't know the cause and effect of the destruction of Fei Ling's sect with her identity as a spirit. But at least she could provide a lot of information for Lu Ping. At this time, when Lu Ping was about to come out of a cabin, Ryu suddenly transmitted her voice to him. Master, Ryu seems to remember that there used to be a secret room here. It seems that Mara hasn't found it yet. Master, open it and see if you can find anything. Lu Ping was delighted and immediately asked. I'm afraid there is more than one secret room in this treasure ship, right? Ryu nodded and said, That's right. It's just that most of the secret rooms are assembled from the components of extremely good quality psychic treasures and above. Just now, Ryu saw quite a few of them, but those secret rooms had already been completely destroyed by Mara. This secret room, however, is made from the components of ordinary magic treasures. Perhaps it's because of this that it didn't attract Mara's attention. However, it's precisely because the quality of this secret room isn't good that even if there are some things inside, they won't be very good. Lu Ping naturally had already thought of this. His divine sense penetrated the direction that Ryu pointed, but the surface of the cabin suddenly flashed with a layer of faint brilliance, and Lu Ping's divine sense was bounced off. Lu Ping was surprised and said, The treasure ship's array is actually still working. Ryu was obviously also surprised and said, Maybe it's because of the spirit vein. When the treasure ship sank that day, although the array was destroyed, most of the array on the treasure ship was still operating. Although Zhongju and Laozu abandoned the ship, he obviously wanted to salvage the treasure ship in the future and use it again, so he didn't completely shut down the array. It's because the array can protect the hull of the ship from being eroded by the seawater to the greatest extent. Lu Ping thought of the array runes on the shell of the treasure ship that were blurred but could still be seen. Presumably, it was because of this that the treasure ship could still maintain a complete outline at the bottom of the sea for 4,000 years. Although the array on the body of the cabin was still working, due to the relocation of the spirit vein, the protection was obviously extremely limited. Lu Ping pressed his palm up, and the surface of his palm flashed with a golden brilliance. The body of the cabin that his palm pressed quickly began to dissolve, and slowly, a cabin with a radius of 5 feet was revealed. After 4,000 years, this cabin still hadn't been invaded by the seawater. When Lu Ping broke this cabin, he had already arranged a layer of waterproof restriction on the outside, so he walked inside. A corpse was lying in the cabin, and the corpse had long decomposed, leaving only a skeleton and tattered clothes. There was a necklace hanging below the neck of the skeleton, and Lu Ping naturally saw that it was a storage magic tool, so he reached out and pulled it off. Lu Ping looked around the cabin, but unfortunately, he didn't find anything. There were only the marks of the bombardment left on the cabin wall. It was obvious that this person was trapped inside after the treasure ship activated the array. After the treasure ship sank, but because of the existence of the spirit vein and Zhongju and Laozu didn't close the array, this cultivator still couldn't escape from the secret room. In the end, he was forcibly suffocated in the secret room. As for how the cultivator managed to enter the secret chamber, Lu Ping didn't know. However, he could tell that the cultivator's cultivation base wasn't high when he was alive, at least not in the Avatar realm. Otherwise, even if he couldn't break through the secret chamber's wall, he could still cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of the Fei Ling sect cultivators who were retreating. Lu Ping roughly walked around the treasure ship, and after he didn't find anything, he returned to the broken cabin wall, and then he followed the hole to the other side of the ship. Only then did he find that the blow that broke the treasure ship not only broke the port side, but also the starboard side. It was precisely because the starboard side was also broken that after the treasure ship sank to the bottom of the sea, the spirit vein was reintroduced into the spirit vein through the hole on the starboard side. At this time, the hole on the starboard side, which was also the source of the spirit vein, had a huge hole dug by Mara. Chapter 932. There was a layer of prohibition placed at the entrance of the cave, isolating it from the seawater. Lu Ping snuck into the cave and found that this layer of prohibition was only a very simple application of the essence of the source. However, the person who had set it up was extremely powerful, which was why it could withstand the pressure of such deep seawater. In Lu Ping's opinion, the person who had set up this layer of prohibition was at least at the Dharma stage, Mara. It was not difficult for Lu Ping to remove this layer of prohibition, but once he touched it, he was afraid that it would immediately alert the hundreds of Mara who had escaped into the cave earlier. After thinking for a while, Lu Ping flicked his hands continuously, and the 12 gentian pearls were flicked one by Lu Ping in all directions of the cave entrance. After that, Lu Ping still felt uneasy, so he placed 4 flying swords around the 12 gentian pearls. Only then did he make a spell with both hands. Just as he was about to hit the layer of prohibition, Lu Ping suddenly pulled back his hands again. He slapped his head, shook a large silver seal from his waist, and threw it above the cave entrance on the port side. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and after making sure that he had set up everything carefully, he stomped his feet and summoned the rank 9 white jade lotus. As the white jade lotus emitted a hazy white brilliance, lines of formation runes flashed on the petals, and then the surface of the 12 gentian pearls shone with a 5-colored brilliance. Lu Ping raised his hands, and the brilliance on the surface of the gentian pearls immediately converged, and together with the white jade lotus, they were hidden in the surrounding seawater. Only then did Lu Ping make a seal with both hands, and fiercely pushed at the prohibition of the cave entrance. Together with the prohibition of the cave entrance, the surrounding seabed suddenly shook, and the prohibition was immediately broken. The turbulent seawater poured into the cave entrance, and countless screams of fear came from the depths of the cave. Lu Ping was still silently guarding the cave entrance. After seeing that the cave entrance was filled with seawater, he shook the cloud-light 5 elements garment that had turned into a cloak behind him, and his entire person suddenly disappeared in the seawater. The water was surging, and more than a dozen Mara rushed out of the cave under the leadership of 2 great Asuras. However, looking at the quiet seabed around them, these Asuras seemed a little suspicious. Under the command of the 2 great Asuras, they began to split up and investigate the surrounding cabins. As soon as the 3 minor repairs Asuras on the left walked to the side of a cabin of the treasure ship, they felt that there was something wrong with the surrounding water. Before the 3 Asuras discovered any clues, their entire bodies began to explode in the seawater. 3 spiritual auras of different attributes spread in the seawater, and the bodies of the 3 minor repairs Asuras melted in the seawater with the dissipation of the spiritual aura. The movement here soon attracted the attention of more than a dozen Asuras. Although the 3 minor repairs Asuras died silently, Mara was extremely sensitive to spiritual aura fluctuations. When Asuras died, they would often return to rich spiritual aura of heaven and earth, and it was extremely easy for other Asuras to know. However, before these Asuras could gather and investigate the place where the 3 minor repairs Asuras had died, these scattered Asuras exploded in different places. The spiritual aura fluctuations caused by the deaths of the minor repairs Asuras came from all directions. The 2 great Asuras finally sensed that something was wrong. They turned around and were about to return to the cave entrance, but they suddenly realized that the seawater around them was surging. Water currents from different directions entangled the 2 great Asuras from all directions. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not break free. At this moment, the two great Azuras finally realized that something was wrong. Shrill roars came from their mouths, and they spread into the cave entrance. They seemed to be warning the other Azuras in the cave, and they seemed to be asking for help. The roars of the great Azuras stopped abruptly, and the surrounding seawater immediately returned to calmness. The bodies of the two great Azuras had completely disappeared, leaving only rich spiritual aura in the seawater spreading in all directions. The complete death of the pair of Azuras finally alarmed the hundreds of great minor repairs Azuras hiding in the cave again. The seawater at the cave entrance fluctuated again, and the fluctuations of the seawater were getting stronger and stronger. Obviously, the number of Azuras that appeared this time was definitely not as simple as a dozen. The surrounding seawater was still calm, as if there was not the slightest clue at all, indicating that Lu Ping had already set up an inescapable net here. Whoosh! More than 20 minor repairs Azuras rushed out of the cave entrance, and rushed in all directions. Immediately afterward, more than 30 minor repairs Azuras surrounded by 7 or 8 great Azuras rushed out of the cave. This was not the end. After the 7 or 8 great Azuras commanded their minor repairs Azuras to occupy their respective positions, another team of minor repairs Azuras and minor repairs Azuras rushed out of the cave one after another. There were about 100 of them in total. The seawater in the cave entrance was still surging. Obviously, there were more Mara following behind. Judging from the aura emitted from inside, there were probably several great Mara whose cultivation had reached the core forging stage. The strange calmness of the cave entrance, and the appearance of a large number of Mara seemed to make many Mara feel that the murderer did not dare to provoke them at this time. They must have gone far away, so they inevitably lowered their vigilance. However, right at this moment, 12 beams of dazzling 5-colored light suddenly shone in the ice-cold seawater. Right when the over 100 Maras were at a loss of what to do, a huge refining phantom suddenly bloomed in the seawater above the cave. Streams of mysterious runes faintly connected with the 12 pearls that were emitting 5-colored light in the surroundings. A Mara whose cultivation had reached the late core forging stage roared loudly, as if to remind the surrounding Mara to be vigilant. The surrounding Mara did indeed move, but then more and more Mara let out panicked roars. When the nearly 200 Mara moved in the seawater, they suddenly found that the seawater around them had become abnormally viscous. Not only did it consume a lot of strength to move, but it also became increasingly slow. In the seawater above, there was a white jade lotus that emitted a misty white light after it bloomed. It seemed to be constantly swaying along with the turbulence of the seawater. The mysterious runes that formed this illusory image seemed to be a lotus, and also seemed to be a picture. At this moment, the 12 beads emitting 5-colored rays of light in the surroundings moved. With the refining phantom reflected in the seawater as the center, the 12 beads fiercely shot out in all directions, drawing a 5-colored halo in the seawater. Almost every time a halo passed by, the bodies of several Mara would be pierced by the beads, and they would completely turn into streams of rich spirit chi in the seawater. It was unknown when, but in the middle of the huge white jade lotus phantom above the seawater, a huge wine cup appeared in the lotus. After the Mara was pierced by the gentian beads, its body had turned into streams of spirit chi and unknowingly gathered in the wine cauldron above the seawater. In the seawater, the screams of nearly 200 Mara when they died not only did not scare the large group of Mara that was rushing out of the cave, but it also made them rush out of the cave even faster. Nearly 200 Azuras were instantly annihilated by the gentian formation set up by Lu Ping, and under Lu Ping's deliberate control, none of those great Azuras at the core forging stage could survive. The 40 to 50 Mara that were lucky enough to survive had not yet escaped the shroud of the huge white jade lotus above their heads, but they suddenly noticed a cold undercurrent surging in the seawater around them. Before these Mara could react, the 4 flying swords had already divided into hundreds of sword chis, completely sealing the space around the gentian formation. In an instant, the dozens of small Mara that were lucky enough to escape were all turned into broken limbs. In the blink of an eye, only over 100 small Mara died so easily under the gentian formation and sword formation that Lu Ping had carefully set up. Not only did Lu Ping not expect this, even Mo Luo, who was in a hurry to rush out of the cave, didn't expect this either. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rushed out of the cave so easily. Instead, they would have waited for Lu Ping to find them while they had the geographical advantage. Over 100 Mara rushed out of the cave under the leadership of a dozen great Mara at the core forging stage. However, what appeared in front of them were dense spiritual chi of various attributes in the seawater, and the remains of over 100 Mara that had not had time to melt. At the instant the 100 or so Mara charged out of the cave, they felt as if they had jumped into a pot of thick soup, and it was difficult for them to even take a single step forward. Some of them turned around and wanted to escape back into the cave, but it was already too late. The gentian formation was launched again, and the sword formation set up by the 4 spirit cultivation flying swords surrounded and killed the fish that escaped the net. In a moment, these great Azuras were all beheaded, and the remaining few small Mara were just some shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Lu Ping just shook a few hand signs, and with a flash of blue light in the seawater, their chests all collapsed, and they could not be more dead. The death of nearly 400 Mara accounted for half of the strength of the previous defeated Mara, and there were no more Mara in the cave. Lu Ping appeared from the seawater, and his divine will stretched out to explore the cave. Suddenly, he felt several strange divine wills surrounding Lu Ping's divine will. Lu Ping laughed coldly in his heart. He knew that this was the Mara in the cave. After discovering that the cave entrance had been sealed by their incomparable strength, the few core forging demonic cultivators had turned their attention to the confrontation of their divine wills. However, they did not know that Lu Ping's own divine will was already at the level of a mid-Dharma adept. Now that he had the cloud sail to protect him, he did not care about the soul-devouring magic that these core forging demonic cultivators had used. Lu Ping's figure turned into water, and the 4 flying swords in the gentian formation were all wrapped up by Lu Ping in the water, and he went deeper into the cave. Behind Lu Ping, a huge black shadow quickly descended from the top of the cave. Dong! There was a muffled sound, and the huge mountain collapsed, completely pressing down on the cave entrance. At the same time, it completely blocked off the escape route of the Mara in the cave. Chapter 933. Lu Ping blocked the exit of the cave with landslide. He had just walked a few feet inside when he noticed that there was a slight fluctuation in the water beside his ear. 2 great Shuras, whose cultivation was equivalent to the late core forging stage, had already attacked Lu Ping from both sides. However, although the 2 water Shuras' escape technique was wonderful, Lu Ping's cultivation was stronger. Before the 2 Shuras could reach him, they found that the seawater in front of them had become in a state of spurting outward. This huge force even made the 2 Shuras unable to move a step forward with their water escape technique. The 2 Shuras immediately realized that something was wrong, but before they could retreat, 2 flying swords had already rushed out of the rapidly spurting water and stabbed at the 2 Shuras. After all, the 2 Shuras' cultivation was still there. They used their companion magic weapons to block the Autumn Beauty sword. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the blocking force to retreat, but unexpectedly, the water that was originally spurting outward had already divided into several thin streams, like ropes, binding the 2 Shuras' limbs. The 2 great Azuras turned pale with fright. But then, their bound limbs suddenly turned into water, and Lu Ping's water manipulation technique lost its target. He was greatly surprised. It was not that Lu Ping had never encountered this kind of magic power. Even when he usually used the water escape technique, he often turned into water. However, with his current strength, there were few Shuras of the same level who could use the water transformation technique to escape from his water manipulation technique. However, these 2 Shuras managed to do so. However, through the exchange just now, Lu Ping could clearly feel that although the 2 Shuras' cultivation was equivalent to the late core forging stage, their strength might not be outstanding. Although Lu Ping was surprised, he naturally did not intend to let these 2 Shuras go. 2 thunderbolts were shot out from Lu Ping's fingertips, and suddenly the 2 Shuras' skin was torn and their flesh was torn, and they screamed miserably. The magical power of Ain Water Thunder that Lu Ping practiced was a magic that even Blood Shura was afraid of. It was naturally not a problem to use it against these two great Shuras. Lu Ping took the opportunity to use the twin flying swords to decapitate the two Shuras, and then with a wave of his hands, Linglong's wine cauldron appeared in the cave and swallowed the two water Shuras' bodies that had not yet melted. Lu Ping stretched out his hand to cut open a space crack, and release Samling, Degui, and Lu Qiner from the Golden House. Although this cave had been opened up by Mara, it was actually not very large. Just now, Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had almost explored all the passages in the cave, and he did not find the presence of the blood Mara that Lu Ping was afraid of. There were 300 to 500 Shuras gathered in the cave, but at this time, they were hiding in the maze like stray dogs. Just now, Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had frightened this group of Mara, and the invasion of Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had caused a few great devil cultivators to use their soul-devouring magic, but they could not hurt Lu Ping at all. Instead, they were seriously injured by Lu Ping's divine telekinesis. This made Mara, who was hiding in the cave, feel despair. Since he had already found out the strength of these Mara, Lu Ping was naturally not interested in finding them one by one and killing them. Therefore, he called out Samling and the others, and handed the task of killing Mara to them. Under Lu Ping's instructions, Samling had already slowed down the growth of his cultivation as much as possible, and focused most of his energy on strengthening his foundation. However, his cultivation had already reached the 8th stage of the core forging realm. With Samling's top-tier bloodline of the Green Sea Snake, although he could not possibly have the same level of strength as Lu Ping, it was almost impossible for an ordinary practitioner at the peak of the core forging realm to win against them. Moreover, if the three of them joined forces, even an early Dharma adept would not be able to gain the upper hand against them. As for Lu Dagui, although his cultivation was slightly weaker, he had already reached the 4th stage of the core forging realm. He had extremely strong defensive abilities. If he were to fight with someone, he might not be a match for a practitioner of the same level, but when it came to taking a beating, perhaps even a practitioner at the 6th stage of the core forging realm would not be able to hurt him at all. Lu Ping had always wanted to go to the South Sea. In addition to wanting to experience the customs of the South Sea's cultivation world, the practitioners of the Baogui clan, the only direct bloodline left behind by Taoist Gui, were also a unique sight in the South Sea. Lu Dagui could barely be considered a mid-tier monster. After refining a type of demon turtle bloodline that was related to the Baogui clan during the blood condensation realm, his grade had risen to the level of a high-tier monster. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have allowed him to participate in the mission of encircling and killing Mara in this cave. Lu Qin originally did not want to come out. After Lu Ping broke the restriction at the entrance, the cave had long been submerged in seawater. Lu Qin cultivated both wind and fire. Originally, fighting at the bottom of the sea was not her forte. However, she was currently at the 8th stage of the core forging realm like Samling. In fact, she had even advanced to the 8th stage before Samling. Her strength was also comparable to Samling's. Although the environment at the bottom of the sea affected her strength, it was not too serious. After Lu Ping released everyone, he let them do whatever they wanted. Except for Dagui and Lu Qiner, Samling acted alone. As for Lu Ping himself, he followed the direction of the source of the large spirit vein. Although this cave extended in all directions, it was like a tree branch with a main branch. This branch was the source of the large spirit vein on the treasure ship. At the source, there was an invisible restriction that separated the cave from the source. Lu Ping reached out and pressed hard on the restriction. A bluish-purple light quickly spread around Lu Ping's palm. However, Lu Ping's bluish-purple inner yuan only spread to a radius of a foot before the restriction was surrounded by a white halo. Then, the halo converged toward the center. The bluish-purple inner yuan that Lu Ping had produced was suddenly squeezed and finally returned to his palm. Lu Ping's palm shook violently, and his whole body was shaken back 2 or 3 steps before he could stand firm. There was a look of shock on his face. If this restriction was really set up by Blood Shura or Blood Demon, it would not be so strong. Then the identity of the creator of Mara's lair was obvious. It had to be at least a Jade Shura. During the Battle of Frost Island, there were only 4 Jade Shuras in Mara's army. Now, they were all being hunted down by the mid-Dharma adepts of the North Sea. No one knew which of the 4 Jade Shuras this lair belonged to. As for the possibility that this lair had been created by Azura, although it was impossible, in the tens of thousands of years since the great calamity of the cultivation world, there had been many Blood Shura and Jade Shura lairs, but no one had ever found an Azura's lair. Lu Ping did not think that he would be so lucky as to find an Azura's lair that had never appeared in the cultivation world. Now that he knew the identity of the Azura who had set up this restriction, Lu Ping had a way to deal with it. There was a flash of light in his hand, and a 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman appeared in Lu Ping's hand. He slapped it on the layer of restriction. It was not that the restriction set up by the Jade Shura was difficult to break, but that the Jade Shura's restriction was connected to the source of the large spirit vein behind it. That was why Lu Ping had no choice but to use a precious 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Hopefully, the source of this large spirit vein had something that would make Lu Ping use the 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman. The 5-colored light spread quickly on the light screen, and then the light suddenly became so bright that it destroyed the layer of light in an instant. Lu Ping was about to walk behind the restriction when he shouted, "Oh no!" He saw dozens of Shuras hiding behind the layer of restriction shout and attack Lu Ping with their accompanying treasures and half-life ritual implements. Although this light screen could block Lu Ping and Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, it did not seem to stop Mara from entering. Lu Ping did not expect there to be so many Mara hiding behind the light screen. When the restriction light screen was opened, he almost fell into their trap. Fortunately, Lu Ping did not want to use the water moon pearl, so he put the cloud sail on his body to resist the water pressure at the bottom of the sea. The dozens of attacks hit Lu Ping at the same time. In the past, Lu Ping would have been seriously injured. But now, he had the cloud sail, which was a thunder spirit treasure, to protect him. The attacks that hit Lu Ping only made him angry. Even so, Lu Ping was already angry. If it was not for the cloud sail, Lu Ping would have suffered a loss. He stretched out his hand and patted his chest. The 7 Thunder Treasures calabash soared into the air and attacked the dozens of Mara that were in chaos after seeing that Lu Ping was unharmed. Although the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash had not condensed the 7th Spirit cultivation restriction, and the Thunder Spirit technique of the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash had not reached the level of a Great Spirit technique, but its power could not be underestimated. Not to mention, the 7 bolts of Een lightning struck together. In an instant, the dozens of Mara were shrouded in it. The small Mara, whose cultivation had not reached the core forging stage, could not even withstand a single one of the Een lightning. Even the big Mara could not withstand 3 or 4 bolts of such dense lightning. Only a few great Azuras at the late core forging stage were able to escape from the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash. However, Lu Ping shook the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash, and a bolt of 7-colored divine lightning shot out. The few great Azuras immediately vanished into thin air. At this time, Linglong jumped out from behind Lu Ping. She pointed to a blue liquid in a small pool not far away and shouted, "Ha! The origin essence!" Lu Ping was startled. He found that his body was surrounded by a rich spiritual energy. He looked up and saw that there was a small pool at the source of the spirit vein. The small pool was filled with a milky white liquid. It was the spirit vein essence milk, a high-grade heaven-step spirit treasure. However, Lu Ping, who had seen the spirit vein essence milk, did not arouse much interest in Lu Ping. What really excited Lu Ping was the fist-sized blue liquid in the center of the spirit vein essence milk. It was the origin essence of the water attribute. Chapter 934. Origin Essence! Not only Linglong, but Ruyu also came out of the golden house and walked quickly behind Linglong towards the small pool. Lu Ping suddenly thought of something. He strode forward and pushed the 2 artifact spirits to the side. Then, He took out a jade essence bottle from his storage mystic instrument, and carefully stored away the ball of origin essence wrapped in the spirit vein milk. This was the origin essence that had no owner. It was much richer and purer than the origin essence that Ling Long had collected from the fallen blood Shura. Its effects were more miraculous, and it could be preserved for a long period of time. Lu Ping stuck 3 spirit-sealing talismans on the full bottle of origin essence. Then he turned to look at a very dissatisfied device spirit behind him. She pouted so much that she could hang an oil bottle on her mouth, and another device spirit with a face full of hidden bitterness. The conditions for the origin essence without an owner were extremely harsh. The origin essence itself contained the essence of spiritual chi from the spiritual vein, and the spirituality of heaven and earth treasures. Therefore, it was usually bred in high-grade heaven and earth treasures. Moreover, the formation of these heaven and earth treasures was directly related to the spiritual vein. It could be said that the bigger the spiritual vein, and the higher the grade of heaven and earth treasures, the more likely it was to breed origin essence. It was even more precious than heaven and earth treasures. Not only could the origin essence be used to greatly enhance one's cultivation, but it could also be used to enhance the spirituality of the Thunder Retribution spiritual treasure. The level of spirituality of the device spirit directly affected the success or failure of the Thunder Retribution spiritual treasure. This was why Ling Long and Ruyu rushed forward at the same time when they saw the origin essence. Although Ruyu was not the device spirit of the treasure, she was the guardian device spirit of the treasure ship. The enhancement of her spirituality would also be of great benefit to her and her future master of the treasure ship. However, the two had obviously underestimated Lu Ping's greed for the origin essence. How could Lu Ping let Ling Long and Ruyu obtain something that could directly enhance one's cultivation? He would not even have enough for himself. However, when Lu Ping saw their expressions, he felt a little embarrassed in his heart. He smiled and said, all right. I'll give each of you a drop in the future." Ruyu smiled and thanked him. Although Ling Long was somewhat reluctant, having a drop was better than not having a drop at all. However, she did not dare to act spoiled in front of Lu Ping, so she could only agree with a sullen face. After dismissing the 2 artifact spirits, Lu Ping turned around and put away the spirit vein essence milk in the small pool. If it weren't for the dual nourishment of this large spirit vein and the heaven high-grade water attribute Fei, how could Lu Ping have obtained such a large portion of water attribute origin essence that suited Lu Ping? The Jade Shura had used a restriction to seal the source of the spirit vein. It must have been because she wanted this origin essence. If she used it herself, with her cultivation at the mid-Dharma stage, the effect would not be too obvious. But if she gave it to one of her Shuras, she might be able to produce a blood Mara immediately. The Jade Shura had never used this origin essence, and that was what she had in mind. It was a shame that Lu Ping had benefited from it. There were loud sounds of fighting coming from the cave. With Samling and Lu Qina's power, they would soon be able to clear out the remnants of Mara in the cave. Lu Ping could even sense that there were already a few Mara that had snuck near the entrance of the cave. They wanted to push away the landslide that Lu Ping had placed at the entrance of the cave and escape. Unfortunately, these Mara were all Shuras that were equivalent to core forging adepts, and yet they were unable to push away the landslide at all. Instead, they revealed their location to Lu Ping. Lu Ping told Ling Long to take care of this large spirit vein, so that it wouldn't be affected by other veins or land veins in the future. At the same time, he brought out Debao, who was hiding in the House of Gold and unwilling to come out. Even with the protection of Lu Ping's inner yuan, Debao still choked on some water when he came out. He barely managed to put up a protective barrier, but it was only enough to ensure his breathing. "Boss, why is it at the bottom of the sea again?" "Nonsense. Most of the cultivation resources in the overseas cultivation world are at the bottom of the sea." Lu Ping stuffed the water-repelling pearl into Debao's mouth without any explanation. Then, he pushed him into the earth vein at the bottom of the sea. He then released the water nether sword and returned to the entrance of the cave to kill all the Mara that were still pushing away the landslide with all their might. After that, Lu Ping scanned the cave with his divine sense. When he discovered that there were no more traces of the powerful Mara in the cave, he opened the House of Gold again and released Wang Qi. During the chaotic battle on Frost Island, Lu Ping had seen Mara destroy the Dao Soldier formation of Wang Qi's team. Wang Qi himself had been surrounded by several Shuras at the time. Although he knew that Wang Qi still had a life-saving method that Lu Ping had given him, he still took him into the House of Gold just in case. At this time, the powerful Mara in the cave had been eliminated by the Samling. Even if there were some great Shuras among the Mara that had escaped, they were only at the early or middle stage of the core forging realm. With Wang Qi's current level of cultivation, he could easily deal with them. It was the perfect place to train his cultivation. If this wasn't the lair of a Jade Shura, and if the Jade Shura hadn't broken through the encirclement of the sects in the North Sea and returned, this place would have been a secret cultivation ground with the support of such a large spirit vein. Lu Ping stayed in the cave for half a day, but he didn't personally attack Mara in the cave. Instead, he looked around the cave, but he didn't find anything special. But when De Bao came out of the spirit vein, he brought Lu Ping disappointing news. This large spirit vein that had been submerged in the sea for 4,000 years had not produced a single spirit gathering orb. Linglong said, "Master, don't forget that this spirit vein is Mara's lair. Mara devours spirits, and they have the same talent as De Bao in finding spirits. Their talent might even be better than De Bao's. Otherwise, why would Mara's lair be found near spirit veins or spirit stone mines? The spirit pulse hasn't been wiped out by the Mara race, and that's because of the Jade Shura. But if you want them to keep the spirit orbs in the spirit pulse, it's going to be hard on them." Lu Ping thought Linglong's words made sense, so he waved his hand and took De Bao, who didn't want to stay in the sea any longer, into the Golden House. At this time, Lu Ping felt something. When he looked down, he saw a jade charm on his waist shatter. Lu Ping's face changed, and he quickly called Sam Ling, Lu Qiner, Wang Qi, and De Gui to the entrance of the cave. Before Sam Ling and the others could ask for the reason, Lu Ping had already opened the door of the Golden House and stuffed them inside. He then waved his hand and put away the landslide at the entrance of the Golden House. After that, he turned into a stream of water and used the water escape technique to pass through the hole created by the treasure ship. However, he didn't go back the way he came from. Instead, he changed directions and traveled dozens of miles away. At this time, a strong aura suddenly exploded from the hole where the treasure ship had sunk behind Lu Ping. It seemed to contain infinite anger, but the aura only flashed for a moment, as if it was afraid of something. Lu Ping sighed in his heart. If he hadn't been careful and laid down dozens of warning charms along the way, the Jade Shura would have been able to detect or avoid most of them. But if one was triggered, Lu Ping would have had a chance to escape before it returned to its lair. Otherwise, he would have been caught by the Jade Shura instead. Lu Ping didn't have a choice. Although the Jade Shura was afraid that the human and demon cultivators would discover its nest and wouldn't dare to hunt down the intruders, Lu Ping didn't dare to go back to the treasure ship to check out the Jade Shura. After coming out of the sea, Lu Ping didn't dare to stop at all. The ship drew a thick bluish-purple line under his feet, and he flew back to Frost Island at almost full speed. In the Battle of Frost Island, Mara's army had failed because of the unexpected alliance between the humans and demons. But the humans and demons struck while the iron was hot and wanted to eliminate the root of the problem. Even if they couldn't eliminate Mara's disaster while it was still budding, they wanted to greatly weaken the disaster this time. Therefore, after Mara's defeat, the human and demon cultivators, including the Dharma adepts, continued to chase and kill the fleeing Mara tribe. After Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, there were a total of 3 Jinling Dharma Laozu guarding Frost Island. Tian Shu Laozu was in charge of dispatching and guarding, while Tianlu Laozu had specially rushed to Frost Island from Tianling Mountain to treat Tianqing Laozu's injuries. After Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, Tian Shu Laozu let out a sigh of relief. At this time, most of the Dharma adepts had already gone out to kill Mara's remnants. Frost Island could be considered to be empty now. Although there were 3 Dharma Laozu guarding Jinling, Tianqing Laozu had not recovered from his injuries, and Tianshu Laozu also knew that he was not strong enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't be guarding Frost Island. The others were all out to kill Mara's remnants. As for Tianlu Laozu, he was originally an alchemist. His advancement to the Dharma stage was a trick, so his strength was at most equal to Tianshu Laozu's, or maybe even weaker. After the battle on Frost Island, the relationship between Lu Ping and Tianshu Laozu had somewhat eased. Lu Ping's strength was already obvious to all. With 2 spirit treasures in hand and 4 flying swords, he was someone that even Blood Shura dared to fight alone. With this kind of strength, even a mid-Dharma adept like Lu Ping would not be able to do anything to him. After seeing Tianshu Laozu, Lu Ping had no time to care about the previous awkwardness between them. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Uncle Master, is Uncle Master Tian Xiang around?" Tianshu Laozu knew that Lu Ping's position in the sect was probably higher than his. For him to ask about Tian Xiang Laozu's whereabouts in such a hurry, there must be something extremely important. Thus, he did not ask Lu Ping for the reason and said, "Uncle Master Tian Xiang, Daoxing Laozu, and the 2 great adepts of the primordial crocodile clan have joined forces to kill that Azura. Until now, there has been no news. However, Uncle Master Tian Kong, Uncle Master Tian Shui, and Master Tian Fan Laozu can be contacted." As expected, Lu Ping nodded and said, "If the 3 Uncle Masters have no urgent matters to attend to, please send a message to ask them to return." Chapter 935. Although the North Sea cultivators won the battle on Frost Island, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Due to Jinling's strong foundation and the fact that a large number of cultivators were stationed on Frost Island, the number of casualties was kept to a minimum. The losses suffered by the other sects could only be described as bone deep. Jinling guarded the largest area on Frost Island, so they suffered the most casualties. Almost half of the 1,000 blood condensation disciples died, and more than a third of the 100 core forging cultivators died. At the same time, they also lost a Dharma adept, the Heaven Attainment Laozu, who lost his last chance to advance to the mid-Dharma stage due to severe injuries to his core. Jinling's losses were already so severe. Even if the other sect's casualties were lighter than Jinling's, they did not have Jinling's foundation to squander. After all, 30 to 50 core forging cultivators were only a tenth of Jinling's total core forging cultivators. If the other sects had a third or even half of their total core forging cultivators, this was a devastating blow to the sections. Especially at the last moment of the Frost Island's grand formation, Mara's army gave up on Jinling's stronghold and began to attack the Spirit Stone mine at the center of Frost Island. After the protective barrier was broken, the cultivators from the other sects paid a devastating price in order to stop Mara's army from entering the Spirit Stone mine. As a result, after Mara's army was defeated, the other sects and major forces could not spare enough forces to guard and surround Mara, who had taken advantage of the chaos to hide in the Spirit Stone mine. Jinling took the opportunity to send spiritual master Xianxin and a group of Jinling cultivators into the Spirit Stone mine to eliminate Mara. Then, Jinling immediately sent a group of blood condensation disciples led by a few core forging cultivators from Tianling Mountain to the Spirit Stone mine. By the time reinforcements from the other sects arrived and began to eliminate Mara, Jinling had already occupied half of the Spirit Stone mine. Naturally, Jinling would not accept this as a fait accompli, but at least Jinling had reaped enough benefits in the process of eliminating Mara. Although the other sects were secretly unhappy, the most important thing now was to chase after the fleeing Mara. In the entire North Sea, other than Jinling, no other sect could guarantee that they would have enough forces to continue eliminating Mara in the Spirit Stone mine while chasing after Mara. The other sects could only watch as Jinling secretly reaped all the benefits. After Tianshu Laozu sent out the sound transmission sword, Jinling and the other 2 mid-Dharma adepts did not know how long it would take for them to return. Thus, Lu Ping hurriedly walked towards the secret chamber of the palace. Unexpectedly, along the way, he happened to see Zhang Xuanqing leading a group of 4th-generation blood condensation disciples out of the teleportation portal. Lu Ping immediately saw Du Jialu among the group of 4th-generation disciples. This time, Lu Ping did not avoid the others. After greeting Zhenren Zhang Xuanqing, he called Du Jialuo aside under the envious gazes of the other fourth-generation disciples. Where are your senior brother Zhang, senior brother Fang, and senior sister Fang? Previously, Lu Ping had sent the three of them to Huanyu Island, where the ruins of the vast sea relic were located, to collect a few rare spiritual materials that they had missed. Now, it was obvious that the four of them had completed the task that Lu Ping had given them. Seeing that Du Jialuo was alone, Lu Ping opened his mouth and asked about the whereabouts of the other three. Du Jialuo took out a storage bag and handed it to Lu Ping. Then, he said, the three senior brothers and senior sisters are now in closed-door training. I estimate that when they come out, they will already be Zhenren in the core forging stage. Lu Ping nodded, but his face did not show any expression. Instead, he thought of Du Jialuo and asked, You are now at the 9th level of the core forging stage. Why didn't you go into closed-door training with them? Du Jialuo answered honestly. I feel that my foundation is not yet solid enough, so I want to make my cultivation more solid. Lu Ping nodded to himself. Although the Fan siblings and Xingwu were also brave and determined to improve, in the process of training, they often did not need a reasonable increase in their cultivation level. Cultivation was always a process of repeated competition between one's lifespan and one's cultivation base. This was also the reason why many cultivators in the cultivation world held a reasonable but rapid increase in cultivation base. As long as it did not affect one's own cultivation base, the pursuit of cultivation speed would always be the main theme of cultivators' cultivation. After all, only by increasing one's cultivation level would a cultivator have more lifespan and energy to break through the next bottleneck. The time that a cultivator saved before breaking through each bottleneck could be used up during the next breakthrough. Therefore, all cultivators had to shorten the cultivation time before breaking through each bottleneck as much as possible in order to prepare for emergencies. However, in Lu Ping's view, the true wisdom of cultivators did not lie in shortening the cultivation time needed for a breakthrough as much as possible. Instead, it lay in the courage to give up. Give up on the cultivation level that could have been broken through a long time ago, and give up on the cultivation time that could have been saved. And these abandoned time should be used to polish one's own foundation, to strengthen one's own foundation. As the saying goes, sharpening a knife does not delay the work of cutting firewood. However, everyone understood this principle, but which cultivator could truly let go and wholeheartedly use time to polish their foundation? Most people found it difficult to find a balance between the two. In the past, Wang Qi's cultivation level had already reached the peak of the blood condensation realm. However, he had been stuck there for decades, unable to break through to the core forging realm. He wanted to lay down a solid foundation. The Fan siblings and Xingwu could not compare to Wang Qi in terms of cultivation level and aptitude. Now, they had to blindly pursue the growth of their cultivation level. With Lu Ping's help, the three of them might be able to successfully advance to the core forging realm. However, compared to Wang Qi, their future path would only get narrower and narrower. On the contrary, although Du Jialuo was also a genius who cultivated earth attribute techniques, he was able to patiently polish his cultivation level. If he did not die prematurely in the future, his achievements would be limitless. Lu Ping clapped his hands, and De Bao walked out from behind Lu Ping. Du Jialuo's eyes lit up, and he said, Martial Uncle De Bao. Lu Ping said, I heard that there are more than 1,000 devil luos swarming into the spirit stone mine this time. Although these demonic cultivators don't have the strength to completely destroy the spirit stone mine, they will more or less cause some damage to the spirit stone mine. Although it's a training mission for the disciples like you, it's also very dangerous. This time, your martial Uncle De Bao will go with you. Du Jialuo nodded, and then he heard Lu Ping say, Although there are enlightened masters in the spirit stone mine, the mine is crisscrossed. Even a core forging master will find it difficult to take care of everything. You must remember that the enemy in the spirit stone mine is not only Mara, but also cultivators from other sections. As the saying goes, do not have the heart to harm others, but do not have the heart to let them go. Sometimes, cultivators from other sects may be even more vicious than Mara. DeBeo turned around, and a yellow smoke dispersed. The spirit-seeking mouse shrank to the size of a palm and scuttled into Du Jialuo's sleeve. After sending Du Jialuo away, Lu Ping walked into the secret room and took out the interspatial mystic artifact he obtained from the treasure ship's secret cabin. Hua! Lu Ping poured out everything in the storage mystic instrument. But other than some spirit materials, mystic instruments, a few low-grade mystic treasures, and a few jade slips that Lu Ping wasn't interested in, there was almost nothing else in the storage mystic instrument. Lu Ping thought about it. After this cultivator was sealed in the secret cabin, in order to maintain his life and cultivation, all the elixirs, spiritual herbs, spirit stones, and other things that could be eaten and used for cultivation were used up by the friar. In the end, he did not escape the fate of death, and there were only these bits and pieces left in the storage magic tool. Lu Ping used his hand to push the pile of things, and there was a clang. Lu Ping looked over and found that there was nothing on the ground. Where did the sound come from? A cyan light lit up in Lu Ping's eyes, and a looming flying sword outline appeared in front of Lu Ping. Invisible flying sword? Lu Ping was overjoyed. So there was this kind of luck. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and the flying sword immediately flew into Lu Ping's hand. Bluish-purple vital energy surged into the flying sword. The flying sword was dyed by the vital energy, and it revealed its original form in front of Lu Ping. Unfortunately, it was only an invisible flying sword with 4 treasures. Its quality was not even as good as the water ghost sword. The enthusiasm in Lu Ping's heart was inevitably extinguished, but when he saw the jade slips on the ground, the flames of hope in Lu Ping's heart rose again. As expected, after Lu Ping crushed the 3 jade slips, he finally found what he wanted in the 4th jade slip. The complete inheritance of the invisible sword art, including the invisible sword secret art, the method to refine the invisible sword, and a total of 9 treasures. It was the treasure that Lu Ping had been seeking for decades. Lu Ping was immediately overjoyed, and then he patiently looked through the remaining 2 jade slips. In the end, a trace of surprise appeared on his face, and he finally kept the last jade slip. After looking through the storage artifact, Lu Ping took out the small bottle of water attribute origin essence that he had obtained in the Azura's lair. When Lu Ping had killed the Blood Azura in the Battle of Frost Island, he had absorbed a trace of water attribute origin essence through Linglong. However, just this trace of essence had saved Lu Ping almost 3 years of cultivation. Now, this small bottle full of origin essence could push Lu Ping's cultivation all the way to that realm? Lu Ping stretched out his finger and carefully drew a small drop of origin essence from the jade bottle into his palm. Then, Lu Ping put his palms together, and a blue light immediately flashed between his palms. He began to refine this origin essence. In the blink of an eye, another half a day had passed. Just as Lu Ping finished refining this origin essence, Lu Ping could clearly feel that his cultivation had increased significantly. At this moment, a crack appeared in front of Lu Ping, and a sound transmission talisman appeared from the crack. Lu Ping took the sound transmission talisman and listened for a moment. Then, he stood up and walked out of the secret room. Chapter 936. Kid, why did you call us back in such a hurry? In the Ice Palace, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, and Tian Kong, the 3 mid-Dharma Jinling Laozu, saw Lu Ping enter in a hurry. Tian Kong Laozu was the first to speak. We finally found traces of a blood shura a few thousand miles away. We were about to chase after it, but Tian Shu called us back with a message glyph. That blood shura could mean that we have a companion spiritual treasure. During the Battle of Frost Island and the days after that, the Sea Fire sect had killed a blood shura and obtained a companion spiritual treasure. Then, it was said that 4 of the 12 small forces Dharma Laozu had joined forces to kill a blood shura and obtained a companion spiritual treasure. However, 2 of the Dharma Laozu had been severely injured by the shura's self-destruction before it died. Before and after the Battle of Jinling, including the blood Shura that Lu Ping had killed, a total of 1 jade Shura, 2 blood Shuras, and 1 blood demon had died by Jinling's hand. His battle record was the most glorious among all the sects in the North Sea. Even among the demons, perhaps only the primordial crocodile clan could compare to Jinling. However, what made Patriarch Tian Kong angry was that Jinling's sect had not obtained a single perfect companion's spiritual treasure. This included the Jade Shura that Patriarch Tian Kong and the other 2 mid-Dharma adepts had killed. When they had killed the demonic Shura, their companion's spiritual treasures had also been destroyed. At most, they had obtained some broken pieces of their spiritual treasures to improve the quality of their spiritual treasures. Lu Ping smiled slightly and said, "Master Uncle, how is the trail of a Jade Shura?" Old Ancestor Tian Kong was stunned when he heard that. Even Old Ancestor Tian Fan and Old Ancestor Tian Shui looked at Lu Ping in astonishment. "You found traces of Jade Shura, and that is why you asked Sky Technique to summon us back?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "I'm afraid we'll need Elder Master Tian Xiang this time. The Jade Shura is just a bonus. It's a pity that Martial Uncle Tian Lin isn't here. Otherwise, with the help of Martial Uncle Tian Lin, this mission would be foolproof." The 3 Laozus frowned. According to what Lu Ping had said, he wanted to gather all of Jinling's best fighters. Did Lu Ping not only find 1 Jade Shura but 2? However, the 3 of them knew that Lu Ping wasn't someone who spoke without thinking. So, Tian Kong Laozu immediately waved his hand and said, "Kid, what exactly is it? Don't beat around the bush." Lu Ping smiled awkwardly before he said seriously, "I found the wreckage of Fei Ling's sect's treasured ship that sank at the bottom of the ocean." "Pooh!" Tian Fan Laozu, who had just drunk a mouthful of hot tea, didn't even have time to swallow it. He asked anxiously, "What? Where? How did you find it?" Tian Shui Laozu, who was beside him, looked at Tian Fan Laozu unhappily and said, "If that's the case, we should ask senior brother Tian Xiang to come back and take charge." At this time, Tian Fan Laozu also calmed down and nodded. "That's right. If it's really a treasured ship, just raising it from the bottom of the ocean would require a great cultivator to do it. If junior sister Tian Shui and the old man were to work together, they might be able to do it. But if we want to hide it from the North Sea sects and the Demon Clan, and secretly escort it to Tianling Mountain, we'll need senior brother Tian Xiang to do it." Tian Kong Laozu was already impatient. With a flip of his wrist, a purple magic sword appeared in his hand. He said, "Then what are we waiting for? The old man will use the magic sword to summon senior brother Tian Xiang." Tian Fan Laozu stretched out his hand to stop Tian Kong Laozu. He said, "There's no hurry. Senior brother Tian Xiang is currently working with 3 other great cultivators to kill Azura. There's still no news of Azura until now. I think Azura is still fighting with them. If senior brother Tian Xiang suddenly stops, not only will the other great cultivators not agree to it, but Azura might also turn around and attack them one by one. The place where the treasured ship sunk without being discovered for 4,000 years must be an extremely secretive place. We're not in a hurry to avoid attracting the attention of the other sects." In fact, Tian Fan Laozu still had a hidden meaning. After all, Azura was the main culprit of Mara's calamity on Frost Island. If they couldn't kill it or severely injure it, it would definitely make a comeback in the future and harm the cultivation world of the North Sea once again. Tian Kong Laozu helplessly put down the magic sword in his hand. Then, he thought of something and said, "Then why don't we work together to kill that Jade Azura first?" Tian Kong Laozu was still brooding over the fact that he couldn't get the companion's spiritual treasure from Mara. Tian Shui Laozu shook his head and said, "According to Martial Nephew Lu, that Jade Azura should be the water Azura that escaped from Feng Shitao and the others. That Azura saw the opportunity early and escaped without any injuries. The 3 of us working together might be able to defeat it, but it will definitely cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of other sects and demon race cultivators. At that time, it doesn't matter if the Jade Azura dies in our hands. If the location of the treasured ship's wreckage is exposed, it won't be worth it. Tian Kong Laozu was very disappointed when he heard that. At this time, the entire North Sea's cultivation world was moving to search for Mara's traces. If they were late, the Jade Azura might not even be able to hide in the lair. It should be known that Lu Ping had already alerted the Jade Azura when he sneaked into the lair. In the end, it was still Tian Shui Laozu who said, "No matter what, we still have to let senior brother Tianxiang know about this first. At the same time, we will also tell senior brother our thoughts. Whether or not he wants to return immediately, it will be up to him." Tian Kong Laozu was overjoyed when he heard that. The sword in his hand was already prepared. With a push, the sword pierced through the void and disappeared. Lu Ping returned to the secret chamber to continue refining the origin essence. During this time, Tianlu Laozu came by once. However, the two of them were helpless when it came to Tianqing Laozu's damaged origin essence. In the end, they could only give up helplessly. A month later, a shocking piece of news swept through the entire North Sea's cultivation world. News came from the Deep Sea Demon region. During the battle between humans and demons against Mara, giant whale demon King Kong Jing Laozu, who had not shown his face all this while, had successfully passed the second Thunder Trial. He became the fifth Dharma adept in the entire North Sea's cultivation world. At the same time, he was also the third Dharma adept in the demon race, and the first Dharma adept apart from the primordial crocodile clan. At this time, the humans and demons had joined forces to kill Mara. The news of 4 Dharma adepts chasing after Azura had also reached Kongjing Demon King's ears. Following that, Kongjing Demon King announced in a high-profile manner that he would help the other 4 Dharma adepts to kill Azura. No one knew how Kongjing Demon King found out about the whereabouts of the 4 Dharma adepts, and rushed over alone. The emergence of a Dharma adept was enough to stir up the entire situation in the North Sea's cultivation world. Ever since Tianxiang Laozu had advanced to the late Dharma stage, although the humans and demons were still in a state of roughly equal strength in the North Sea's cultivation world, the human race cultivators had long gained the upper hand in the overall situation. This was especially so with the rise of Jinling. After Jinling had occupied Huangli Island, the demon race cultivators had repeatedly failed to take it down. If it weren't for the other sects in the North Sea having their own concerns and the fact that the humans were not united, the demon race would have long been suppressed by the human race cultivators to the point where they could not even lift their heads. However, after the battle on Frost Island, the human race cultivators had suffered heavy losses. The demon race, on the other hand, had been waiting at ease. Even if there were losses, it was because they had joined forces with the human race cultivators to hunt down Mara. Compared to the human race, the demon race's losses were undoubtedly much smaller. Fortunately, the demon race was not united. The giant whale demon clan was one of the only 2 top-tier demon clans in the North Sea. In reality, not long after returning to Jinling, Tianxiang Laozu and the other 3 Middle Dharma adepts, Laozu clans, once again secretly snuck back to the depths of the sea hundreds of miles away from Frost Island. They began to secretly search for traces of the treasured ship wreckage and the Jade Shura's cave according to the address Lu Ping had left behind. At this time, Lu Ping was still in the secret room on Frost Island, cultivating in seclusion to refine the origin essence. By the time he had finished refining the small bottle of origin essence, Lu Ping had pushed his own cultivation all the way to the last step, and he had clearly begun to touch the barrier of the Dharma stage. In the core space, the huge golden Dan was only left with a thin layer, and the 9 seal patterns on the surface of the golden Dan had also become much fainter. Only the strange dragon was moving around in the golden Dan, as if it could break through the thin layer and appear in the core space at any time. Chapter 937. Lu Ping had been in seclusion on Frost Island for more than half a year. Because he had the help of the origin essence, the effect of this half a year of seclusion was equivalent to 20 to 30 years of cultivation. However, to be able to push Lu Ping's cultivation to the last step of the Dharma manifestation stage in just 20 to 30 years, it wasn't completely because of the origin essence. Around the huge golden core in Lu Ping's heart space, the innermost layer of the Dan Xia purple aura was still surrounding an indescribable thing. Before Lu Ping had reached the peak of the core forging stage, this layer had always been surrounding Lu Ping's golden core. Even when Lu Ping had reached the 9th grade golden core, it didn't have any effect at all. However, after Lu Ping had reached the 9th grade golden core, this layer seemed to have been awakened by the strange dragon within the golden core and started to be absorbed by the strange dragon through the golden core. Although the process was extremely slow, it had unwittingly affected Lu Ping's cultivation significantly. However, during the past 6 months of closed-door cultivation, Lu Ping was able to refine the origin essence at a much faster rate. Perhaps it was due to the origin essence's influence, but as he refined the origin essence, the strange Jiao's rate of absorption gradually increased. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was able to push his cultivation base to its current level in just half a year. This mysterious layer was none other than the pure yang soul that Lu Ping had obtained from Ying Tian Sect's pure yang cultivator, Fei Tian Laozu's inheritance in the Ying Tian dojo. When Lu Ping came out of seclusion, he found that only Tian Shan Laozu was left guarding Frost Island. Tian Shan Laozu had disappeared at some point. Tian Shan Laozu had obviously discovered that Lu Ping had come out of seclusion. In Lu Ping's perception, Tian Shan Laozu's figure suddenly disappeared. Tian Shan Laozu had obviously used a spatial divine ability to come to him. Lu Ping was slightly stunned. He had just come out of seclusion and hadn't gone to greet Tian Shan Laozu. As a senior, Tian Shan Laozu had come out to greet him. There must be something urgent. Otherwise, Tian Shan Laozu wouldn't do this. The space in front of Lu Ping rippled. Tian Shan Laozu stepped out. Seeing Lu Ping, he said, "Dao Shi is dead. Senior brother Tian Shu has returned to Tianling Mountain." Lu Ping's expression immediately changed. "Junior brother Yin Xianchu has returned to North Sea?" Tian Shan Laozu nodded and said, "When Dao Shi was assassinated, there were Xianling sect cultivators around. Yin Xianchu killed 3 of them and broke out of the encirclement despite being heavily injured. Right now, he is being chased by cultivators from Xianling, Vast Ocean, Haiyan, Feiyu, and Lingdu sects. At the same time, the sects from North Sea are also working together to pressure us to hand over Yin Xianchu," Lu Ping said angrily. "Junior brother Yin Xianchu broke out of the sect long ago, and is no longer a disciple of our sect. How dare they do this?" Patriarch of Tianshan smiled bitterly and said, "Back then, the few of you caused such a huge commotion in the North Sea. How could the other sects believe you? They would only think that it was a ploy by our faction behind the scenes." Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and said, "Senior Uncle Tian Shu, going back at this time, could it be?" Tian Shan Laozi sighed and said, "There's no other way. Our sect has no choice but to do this. After all, this time, the sects of North Sea are working together to pressure us. The 11 small sects and families are also supporting them. Our sect has no choice but to do this. Senior brother Tian Shu has already started searching for Yin Xianchu in North Sea under senior sister Tianling's order." When Lu Ping heard that it was his teacher's order, he could only suppress his anger. He took a deep breath and said, "This doesn't seem like teacher's style. Is there any other reason?" Tian Shan Laozi nodded and said, "There seems to be the shadow of the Crystal Palace. But the main reason is that all the sects are afraid after the vast ocean relic and the Battle of Frost Island. The strength that our sect has displayed is far beyond the other sects' reach." Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Is there any movement from the demon race?" At this time, what he was most afraid of was that the demon race would take the opportunity to collude with Mysterious Spirit, Vast Ocean, and other sections. Tian Shan Laozu also understood what Lu Ping meant and said, "Fortunately, after Demon King Kong Jing broke through to the late Dharma stage, the deep-sea demon region is not peaceful now. Also, there is news that a large number of Mara have appeared somewhere in the deep-sea demon region. I'm afraid the demon race will not be able to care about this place for now. Only then did Lu Ping remember that Tian Shan Laozu did not rush to see him just to tell him this news. He asked, "Senior uncle, do you have any orders?" Tian Shan Laozu said, "It's not my orders. Senior sister Tianling asked you to return to Tianling Mountain as soon as possible after you come out of seclusion." Lu Ping nodded and said, "All right then, I won't stay here any longer." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a flash of light under his feet and he was about to fly towards the teleportation device. However, he suddenly thought of something and stopped to ask, "Senior uncle, how is the large spirit stone mine in the center of the island now?" Tian Shan Laozu knew what he wanted to ask and said, "The Mara inside has been eliminated, but the mine has been damaged to a certain extent. In the next few years, there may be a certain degree of decline in the mine's production. Fortunately, the damage is not serious, and it will recover on its own after a period of time." After returning to Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping did not immediately go to see Tianling Laozu. Instead, he hurried to the crafting hall with a heavy heart. However, he found that the crafting hall was currently deserted. In the past, the bustle of the crafting hall was second only to that of the elixir pavilion. Lu Ping frowned as he entered the crafting hall. Only then did he realize that the entire crafting hall, including Tianshan Laozu and the ordinary core forging realm artificers, was not in the crafting hall. Only a few blood condensation realm disciples who were learning artificing were in the crafting hall. Lu Ping slapped his head as if he had thought of something. Then, he walked out of the crafting hall and headed towards the puppet pavilion. There was only one possibility for the crafting hall's cultivators to disappear en masse. Tianling Laozu and the others had secretly transported the treasure ship from the sea outside Frost Island to Tianling Mountain. The cultivators of the crafting hall had naturally been summoned to prepare to repair the treasure ship. This was the true symbol of Jinling's rise. No wonder Jinling was so secretive. Ji Xianxian had been depressed for a period of time after losing to Ouyang Weijian a few decades ago. Later, he was inspired by Lu Ping and pulled himself together. Ji Xianxian had been in a state of semi-seclusion for the next few decades. Even after Lu Ping returned from the Middle Earth, Ji Xianxian hadn't seen him again. Ji Xianxian had always been on the best terms with Yin Xianchu. At this time, Lu Ping didn't believe that Ji Xianxian was still in seclusion. Inside the puppet pavilion, spiritual master Xian Huai was walking outside. He was stunned when he saw Lu Ping walking towards him. Then, he turned around and walked past Lu Ping as if he didn't see him. Lu Ping was about to salute Spiritual Master Xian Huai when he saw Spiritual Master Xian Huai acting like this. In the blink of an eye, Spiritual Master Xian Huai had already walked past Lu Ping in a hurry. Lu Ping turned around to look at Spiritual Master Xian Huai's shadow, then turned to look at the puppet pavilion. His expression immediately darkened, and then he strode into the puppet pavilion. In the side hall of the puppet pavilion, Lu Ping pushed the door of the side hall. Rays of runes flowed on the door, dispersing all of Lu Ping's strength. Lu Ping frowned and immediately doubled the strength in his hand. However, the door still didn't budge. "It's useless. This is a restriction formation personally set up by Marshal Uncle Tianfeng." Ji Xuanxuan's voice faintly came from inside the side hall. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "You can see me? Looks like you've already heard about junior brother Yin's matter." Ji Xianxian sighed and said, "I heard that he killed that scum Dao Shi. I knew that he was going to be in trouble. I originally wanted to help him, but who would have thought that the sect seemed to have already predicted this?" Marshal Uncle Tianfeng immediately appeared in front of me and put me under house arrest in this side hall. Ji Xianxian then said, "I heard that you were in the limelight again on Frost Island and then went into seclusion to cultivate. Why are you here now?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "I just came out of seclusion and wanted to find you to understand the situation. You should know that you were already under house arrest, so I couldn't be bothered to come over. I don't think you know much about the situation here." Ji Xianxian said anxiously, "Don't you have to think of a way to let me out? Otherwise, Yin Xianchu will really be in trouble." Lu Ping said. You also know who he killed, Fa Xiang Laozu. Why isn't Dao Xing jumping around anxiously? At this time, who knows how many people in the North Sea are looking for him? You and I are both his good friends, and who knows how many people are watching us in the open and in the dark. If we really let you out to look for him, that would be harming him. You have to understand that Marshal Uncle Tianfeng didn't put you under house arrest to keep you out of this matter, but to protect you, and also to protect him. Ji Xianxian was silent for a moment, then said, You're right, but I still have to go out. I also know that you will go find him. Lu Ping opened his mouth, but heard Ji Xianxian say again, Don't worry, I won't go find him. It's just that what's with putting me under house arrest in this side hall? Lu Ping recalled that Taoist Master Xuanhuai had deliberately pretended not to see him, so he sighed and said, I'll try, but I've never been to the puppet pavilion today. Ji Xianxian laughed in a low voice. Do you think I don't know your methods? A golden light flashed in Lu Ping's palm, and the restriction runes on the door lit up once more. However, after being touched by the golden light in Lu Ping's palm, it began to slowly melt. A moment later, the power of the restriction on the door was greatly reduced due to the destruction of a part of it. Lu Ping took the opportunity to form a few hand seals on the door, and the flickering light of the other runes instantly dimmed and disappeared from the door. Lu Ping pushed the door open and said, Come out. Ji Xianxian, who was covered in sloppiness, walked out of the side hall and stretched his waist. Lu Ping frowned and said, How did it end up like this? Ji Xianxian didn't care at all. He turned around and laughed in a low voice. Where's that withered willow tree of yours? Lu Ping was startled and said happily, What, are you confident now? Seeing Ji Xianxian nod his head proudly, Lu Ping finally noticed that Ji Xuanxuan's cultivation had already risen to the 8th level of the core forging realm. However, it seemed that he had just broken through, and the aura around his body hadn't completely stabilized yet. This was probably because he was under house arrest. Oh right. Ji Xianxian seemed to have thought of something and asked, I remember that you once cultivated the soul-splitting secret technique. Do you still have that piece of soul-nurturing wood? Seeing Lu Ping nod his head, Ji Xianxian smiled and said, Fortunately, with this spiritual item that has been nurtured and refined by your divine sense, the creation of this avatar can be saved a lot of trouble. Chapter 938. Only Xianling's sect was truly angered by Dao Shi's death. However, Dao Shi Laozu's death was an opportunity to restrain Xianling. The Battle of Frost Island once again allowed the sects to see Xianling's schemes and unparalleled strength. The sects of the North Sea knew that if this continued, Xianling might really be unstoppable in the North Sea. In a group, when there was an outstanding person, many people might be willing to follow him. However, when this person's ability surpassed the limits of most people, this person would be isolated and even viewed with hostility. Xianling's sect was currently facing such a situation. No matter how strong Xianling's sect was as a medium-sized sect, there was a limit to how strong it could be. After all, there were forces in the North Sea that could balance it. However, when Xianling's sect's power gradually began to show signs of surpassing that of a medium-sized sect, it would be faced with the panic of the various sects in the North Sea, and they would have to join forces to contain it. Even the attitudes of Shiyan Pavilion, Yijian's sect, and Chongming's sect, which were in alliance with Xianling's sect, had become a little unclear due to Dao Shi's death. Spiritual Master Xianhuai felt that Lu Ping's ability to easily break through the restrictions set by Tianqing Laozu was both unexpected and reasonable. However, although he was unwilling to put his disciple under house arrest, he was even more unwilling to see his disciple lose his life because of brotherhood. Hence, after Lu Ping released Ji Xianxian, Xianling's sect's puppet master, Taoist Xianhuai, who had lost all hope of advancing to the avatar realm, began to help his disciple create an avatar for Lu Ping. At the same time, he was also monitoring his disciple closely, lest he took the opportunity to escape from Tianling Mountain to look for Yin Xianchu. Lu Ping originally wanted to go to his two good friends to understand the situation, but he didn't expect to find almost nothing in the end. Helpless, he could only go to the hall of Chonghua to see his teacher. After Dao Shi Laozu's death, the various forces of the North Sea gradually united to punish Xunling. The various sects envoys entered and left Heaven Spirit Mountain several times, some with high status, but Xunling was always received by the sect master Lu Tianling, Laozu. Although many envoys, and even some first-generation cultivators, wanted to meet the few mid-Dharma Laozu and even Tianqing Laozu, they were all rejected by Laozu. It was as if Xunling's first-generation cultivators had all disappeared, and everything in Xunling, big or small, had been handed over to Xunling's second-generation cultivators. However, Lu Ping knew that it wasn't because Xunling's first-generation cultivators had given up their power, but because the sect's first-generation cultivators, Laozu, were all focused on repairing the wreckage of Fei Ling sect's treasured ship. Almost all the craftsmen in the crafting hall had been transferred, so how could they care about other things? Lu Tianling, Laozu, saw Lu Ping come in and smiled. "You've found out most of the information, right? Tell me, what do you plan to do?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. "Does the sect already know the whereabouts of Junyaring?" Lu Tianling, Laozu, looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "Junior Li Xianin only has one successor, so his inheritance shouldn't be broken. But now, this kid has surpassed his predecessor, and his abilities are even better than Junior Li Xuanin's. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill Dao Shi and break out of the encirclement in front of so many Xian Ling sect cultivators. It won't be easy to find him." Lu Ping was relieved. Obviously, none of the sects in the North Sea had any news of Yin Xianchu. The reason why the sects were pressuring Xunling was probably because they thought that Xunling was secretly protecting Yin Xianchu. Lu Ping thought for a while, then said, "I heard that Master has already sent Uncle Master Tian Shu out to search for Junior Yin?" Lu Tianling, Laozu, looked at Lu Ping and said, "I understand what you're thinking, but this time, our sect has no choice but to do this, because the Crystal Palace has officially begun to intervene in the North Sea's affairs." Lu Ping was shocked. Although the Crystal Palace had the intention to intervene in the North Sea's affairs, they were suppressed by the sects in the North Sea. In the end, they had no choice but to stand behind Xian Ling's sect and be the driving force behind the scenes. Now that the Crystal Palace had officially stepped onto the stage, why didn't the sects in the North Sea object this time? Lu Tianling, Laozu, seemed to know what Lu Ping was thinking and continued. "That Yin Xianchu destroyed a lair of the overflowing ocean gang in the East Sea, and found a teleportation formation that leads to the North Sea. That's why he snuck into the North Sea." The overflowing ocean gang was an external force of the Crystal Palace. This was almost an open secret in the North Sea. One of the overflowing ocean gang's lair had been destroyed, and dozens of their disciples had died in Yin Xuanchu's hands. The Crystal Palace naturally used this to pressure Xunling. The sects in the North Sea were worried that Xunling would not be able to keep them in check, so they turned a blind eye to the Crystal Palace's public intervention. Lu Tianling, Laozu, continued. "Originally, the sects in the North Sea had been weakened by a lot during the Battle of Frost Island, and the share of the Spirit Stone mine should have changed as well. However, with the current situation, in order not to provoke the sects in the North Sea, we had no choice but to postpone this matter for now." Lu Ping did not know why his teacher would tell him so much, so he asked carefully, "Then what will our sect do next?" Lu Tianling, Laozu, glanced at him and said, "What else can we do? Rest and build up our strength, and prepare to go." Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Is it because of the treasured ship?" Lu Tianling, Laozu said, "The restoration of the treasured ship is the most important thing, but don't forget, if our sect wants to become a large sect, not only do we need the treasured ship and 2 Dharma adepts, there is another important condition, and that is to have 3 Dharma adepts." Lu Ping was stunned for a moment and said, "This disciple understands." The so-called 3 Dharma adepts referred to the first, second, and third generation of Dharma adepts in a large sect. This meant that the inheritance of this large sect would not be broken in a short period of time, and it would not just be a flash in the pan. This was also one of the basic conditions for a large sect to be recognized by the cultivation world. In order for Junling to become a large sect, after finding the wreckage of the treasured ship of Fei Ling sect, there were only two conditions that had yet to be met. One was to have a second Dharma adept, and this was something that no one in the first generation of Junling could achieve. Tian Shui and Tian Fan, the two Laozu's path of cultivation, had almost reached the end. Tian Kan Laozu did not have much time left to live, and as for Tian Lu and Tian Jiang, the two Laozus, it was needless to say. The second Dharma adept's hope had already been placed on Tian Lin, Laozu. The second condition was to have a Dharma adept appear in the third generation of disciples. Currently, among the third generation of disciples in Junling, only Lu Ping was outstanding. Naturally, Lu Ping would not pass on this responsibility. Lu Tianling Laozu drank a mouthful of honey tea. Lu Ping's eyelids twitched involuntarily. Ever since Lu Ping obtained a nest of amethyst bees, the 10 or so Laozus in Junling all started drinking amethyst honey tea. Naturally, the amethyst honey was exploited by Lu Ping. Lu Tianling Laozu continued, "Your uncle Tiancheng has already entered Huangli Island. For the time being, don't go out and focus on your cultivation. Don't bother about Yin Xuanchu's matter." Lu Ping was a little confused. Could it be that teacher was going to put him under house arrest like Ji Xianxian? But wasn't this a little too much? Lu Ping asked carefully, "How's Uncle Tiancheng's injury? Is it to guard against the demon race?" Lu Tianling Laozi said unhappily, "It's to guard against you. If you go out of the sect alone, I'm afraid there will be a few Laozus from various sects coming to kill you. You've made a name for yourself on Frost Island. Even blood azure fell in your hands. Compared to you, what is Yin Xianchu?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and his expression immediately became a little ugly. It seemed that the current situation in Junling was worse than he had expected. It was obvious that the various sects were willing to shed all pretense of cordiality with his own sect for some matters. Lu Tianling Laozu saw everything clearly from the side, so he said, "You don't have to worry too much. The various sects in the North Sea don't dare to make a move against our sect at the moment. But if there's a chance to surround and kill you, it's very likely that the various sects will do it at all costs." Lu Tianling Laozi paused, then continued, "Your uncle Tiancheng's origin is damaged, and he lost the chance to advance to the middle Dharma stage. But his strength is not affected, and his injury is not too serious. The reason why he is stationed at Huangli Island is not only to give you time to cultivate in seclusion, but also because your little girlfriend has been recruited. The repair of the treasured ship is extremely important. Not only do we need a large number of artificers to work together, we also need formation masters to repair the formations on the treasured ship. Nephew who is currently a formation master, so the repair of the treasured ship can't be done without her." After exiting the palace of Chonghua, Lu Ping had basically figured out the situation, so he naturally had a plan in his mind. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then called out Wang Qi, who was cultivating in seclusion, from the House of Gold. He said, "You go to Huangli Island first. Your uncle who has left Huangli Island for some matters, and I'm afraid she won't be able to return in a short period of time. I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll leave everything on the island to you for the time being. If there's any trouble, just go find your uncle Tiancheng." Wang Qi nodded and was about to leave, but he was stopped by Lu Ping, who handed him a jade slip and a faintly discernible flying sword. He said, "This flying sword is an invisible sword that I obtained from the Fei Ling sect. There are 4 treasures condensed on it, and that jade slip contains the invisible sword art that I obtained from the Fei Ling sect. I'll pass it on to you now, so when you go down, practice diligently, and don't be negligent." Finished speaking, Lu Ping handed a storage pouch to Wang Qi and said, "The Fang siblings and Xing Wu are in seclusion on Huangli Island. If they advance to the core forging stage, you can take them as registered disciples on behalf of Master, and distribute the items in this storage pouch to the 3 of them." After sending Wang Qi away, Lu Ping walked towards the back of Tianling Mountain. After passing by Fornak's cavern ancestors' cave dwelling, Lu Ping descended from a cliff and walked towards a pile of rubble at the bottom of the cliff until he disappeared into the rubble. Chapter 939. Behind the pile of rocks was a huge world within a cave. It was about 1,000 feet tall and about 1,000 feet wide, and it was nearly 10,000 feet deep into the cave. Half of the cave was submerged in seawater. The huge pile of rocks at the periphery might just be an incredibly brilliant illusory rune, but if it was not a cultivator with an incredibly high status in Jinling, they would be helpless before that huge pile of rocks. As soon as Lu Ping entered the cave, Ling Su's voice sounded in his ears. "Show me your jade token!" Lu Ping looked up and saw Reverend Xian Shang looking at him with a cold expression. Lu Ping had no choice but to hand over the jade plate at his waist. The jade plate had a seal to identify the cultivators in Jinling's secret technique, and it was related to the life of all the cultivators on the jade plate. Forget about the fact that it was difficult for others to impersonate it. No one other than Lu Ping could impersonate it. Reverend Xian Shang took the jade plate, and a true origin halo flashed in his palm. Reverend Xian Shang returned the jade plate to Lu Ping and said, "Junior brother Xian Ping, this is my duty. Please do not blame me." Lu Ping nodded at Reverend Xian Shang and said, "I also have to congratulate you for improving by leaps and bounds, senior brother." Lu Ping used his divine thought to sense the surging aura around Reverend Xian Shang. It was clear that he had just reached the 8th layer of core forging, and his aura had yet to calm down. Reverend Xian Shang's face twitched, but in the end, he did not smile. "I can't compare to you, junior brother Xian Ping." Lu Ping knew that Reverend Xian Shang usually did not smile, which was why he did not say much. He smiled faintly at Reverend Xian Shang, then walked into the depths of the cave along the two sides of the waterway. The huge cave might be at the bottom of the cliff, but light was not affected. When Lu Ping walked hundreds of feet forward, he could already see a huge ship docked in the waterway ahead of him. Based on its appearance, what else could it be but the sea chariot of Fei Ling sect, which had once sunk at the bottom of the sea? However, the treasured ship had been roughly cleaned. The sand and rust on the surface of the treasured ship had been removed. The treasured ship had been restored to its original appearance, which made Lu Ping look even more like the accumulation of time. Hundreds of Jinling cultivators were busy on and off the ship. Some of them were cultivators from the Artifact Refinement Hall, and they were the busiest among the hundreds of cultivators. Some of them were busy cleaning the rust on the outer shell of the ship, some were checking if every piece of the ship was still usable, and some were replacing some rusted things on the ship. The most skilled artificers in the Artifact Refining Hall were divided into two groups. One group had opened up a huge artifact refining room on the stone wall of the cave, and was busy refining something with flames. Waves of heat caused the originally humid cave to seem hot and dry. The other group of cultivators gathered together to discuss something. They often quarreled due to differences of opinion. Lu Ping even saw a third-generation disciple waving his fist and arguing with a second-generation cultivator about something. Their voices grew louder and louder, and in the end, it was the second-generation cultivator who lost. Before the third-generation disciples could feel proud of themselves, they were attracted by the next topic and joined in the discussion. Lu Ping could clearly sense that all the cultivators in the Artifact Refining Hall had fallen into a state of extreme excitement. For the artificers in the overseas cultivation world, the true pinnacle wasn't refining one or two tribulation lightning spirit treasures, but being fortunate enough to participate in the construction of a treasured ship. If they could preside over the construction of an important component of a treasured ship, their name could even go down in the cultivation world for thousands of years. The reason why Jiao Yuqiang of the Fei Ling sect was known as the rare artifact refining genius of the North Sea cultivation world in 1,000 years was because he personally made the Golden House in Qianzhongsu, which could be used as the main cabin of a treasured ship using a large spatial artifact instead of an abode treasure. Before that, the main cabins of treasured ships in the overseas cultivation world were all inlaid with abode treasures. Not only was it extremely difficult to make, but it was also extremely easy to damage, especially when the treasured ship was passing through the stormy ocean. The space there was extremely unstable, and it had a strong destructive effect on a large space like an abode treasure. Usually, every time the treasured ships of the overseas large sex came to the Middle Earth, the abode treasure in the main cabin would undergo a major repair, consuming a large amount of rare spiritual materials. This was because the journey was smooth. If there was a slight carelessness when passing through the stormy ocean, it would not be strange for an abode treasure to be destroyed. Although such a loss was considered serious for the cultivation world of the East Sea or the South Sea, for the barren cultivation world of the North Sea, the destruction of an abode treasure could only be described as disastrous. In view of this, Jiao Yuqiang presided over the refining of a large spatial artifact to replace the abode treasure. How could a spiritual artifact be used to replace an abode treasure? This was simply a joke. From the moment Jiao Yuqiang had this idea, he had been reminded and ridiculed by countless people, whether kind or malicious, but Jiao Yuqiang was unmoved. In the end, he still turned his idea into reality. When Jiao Yuqiang, with the support of his teacher, Zhongshuan Laozu, successfully inlaid the successfully refined spatial artifact into the treasured ship, and it could support the existence of a large spiritual vein, not only was the entire Fei Ling sect in disbelief, but when the news spread, it almost shook the entire overseas cultivation world. The frequent damage, or even destruction of the main cabin of the treasured ship was almost an unspeakable problem for the large sects in the overseas cultivation world. The forging grandmasters of the overseas sects had put in a lot of effort, but they still could not solve this problem. In the long run, even if the East Sea and the South Sea were richer than the North Sea, it was not to the point that they could ignore the frequent loss of the abode treasure. But now, Fei Ling sect was actually able to use a large spatial magic tool to replace a heavenly abode magic treasure as the main cabin of the treasured ship. It was obvious that it was much easier to refine a spatial magic tool than a heavenly abode magic treasure, and the amount of spiritual materials needed to refine a heavenly abode magic treasure could not be mentioned in the same breath. This was undoubtedly a great news for the overseas large sects who had suffered from the destruction of the abode treasure. However, Jiao Yuqiang had done it, but it did not mean that other forging grandmasters and forging grandmasters could do it. The overseas large sects had invested a lot of manpower and material resources, but they still could not replace the abode treasure with a spatial artifact and inlay it on the treasured ship. Therefore, the ambassadors of the overseas large sects had all gone to Fei Ling sect, wanting to get the method of embedding the spatial artifact on the treasured ship from Fei Ling sect. Fei Ling sect naturally would not leak this secret. Many large sects had offered generous cultivation resources in exchange for this method, but they were all rejected by Fei Ling sect without any hesitation. The Crystal Palace even threatened to use a second tribulation spiritual treasure in exchange for the method, but it was still to no avail. Later, Fei Ling sect even threatened them with words, but Fei Ling sect still withstood the pressure and insisted not to leak the method. However, Fei Ling sect naturally would not be so stupid to offend all the overseas large sections. Soon, they proposed a new method that was, Fei Ling sect would refine and inlay the spatial artifact on the treasured ship of the overseas large sects to replace the abode treasure. However, the overseas large sects would have to pay a certain amount of cultivation resources as a price. Now, the overseas large sects finally understood that Fei Ling sect had originally planned to use a small amount of resources for a long time. Previously, although the price paid by the various sects in exchange for the method of Fei Ling sect was much higher than that of embedding the main cabin of the spatial artifact by Fei Ling sect, the spatial artifact was often damaged like the abode treasure. It was even not as good as the abode treasure in the stormy ocean. However, the refining of the spatial artifact was too cheap. It was so cheap that even if it was a one-time thing, it would need to be replaced after entering and exiting the stormy ocean. Therefore, the various sects would rather use the spatial artifact than the abode treasure. Although Fei Ling sect did not ask for an exorbitant price, in the long run, this method was undoubtedly the most cost-effective for Fei Ling sect. Fei Ling sect could continuously earn cultivation resources from the overseas large sects, and the various large sects had no choice but to submit to Fei Ling sect when it came to the treasured ship. Zhao Yuqiang, who was originally just an ordinary refiner, became famous throughout the world because of this. He gained the favor of the entire Fei Ling sect, and from then on, he soared to the sky. Lu Ping could not see any trace of Chen Lian below the treasured ship. He knew that Chen Lian was now a refiner grandmaster. At this moment, he must be together with Tianjiang Laozu and the other first-generation Laozu of the sect. Thus, he flew up to the treasured ship and walked towards the original location of the main cabin. Just as Lu Ping expected, Chen Lian and Tianjiang Laozu were currently together with Tian Xiang, Tian Shui, Tian Fan, and Tian Kong. Besides them, Daoist Xianqin and Hu Lili were also present. The few of them were frowning, as if they had encountered an extremely difficult matter. Seeing Lu Ping coming over, the few of them ignored him. Just when Lu Ping was about to go talk to Chen Lian, he heard Tian Xiang Laozu suddenly say, "If it doesn't work, then we will first embed the flying cloud's heavenly abode here to replace the main cabin. We can't find the method to embed the spatial artifact, but the method to embed the heavenly abode has been obtained by Tai Shin Laozu from someone else." Seeing that Tianjiang Laozu seemed to have something to say, Tian Xiang Laozu raised his hand to stop him and said, "Junior brother Tianjiang, old man understands. Right now, we should first repair the treasured ship. As for the loss of the heavenly abode, we can talk about it after our sect becomes a large sect." The Flying Cloud's heavenly abode was one of Jinling's heavenly abode treasures. It was also a place of inheritance for Jinling. The cloud sail in Lu Ping's hand was obtained in this heavenly abode. Although the quality of this treasure wasn't high, and the heavenly abode was mostly filled with undulating mountain ranges, the heavenly abode treasures embedded in the main cabin of the treasured ship were all of the same grade. Due to the damage caused by the stormy ocean, when embedding a heavenly abode as the main cabin, all the sects would try to use a lower-grade heavenly abode to minimize the damage. Tianjiang Laozu said, "All right, even if we use the Flying Cloud's heavenly abode as the main cabin, what should we do about the guardian artifact spirit of the treasured ship? Do we have to destroy a second tribulation spirit treasure and nurture the artifact spirit inside into a new guardian artifact spirit?" Tian Kong Laozu was shocked to the side. Jinling only had 2 second tribulation spirit treasures. One was left behind by Tai Shin Laozu to stabilize the fate of the sect, and it had always been kept by Tian Xiang Laozu. Naturally, this treasure would not be destroyed. If they really wanted to nurture a guardian artifact spirit, they would have to destroy the Splitting Mountain Axe. Don't even think about it. The Splitting Mountain Axe and the old man's training method are very compatible. With the Splitting Mountain Axe in hand, the old man can even fight against the Jade Shura. Even if the old man doesn't have long to live, that kid from Tianshan is training the same method as the old man. Furthermore, Tianshan might enter the mid-Dharma stage in the future. The old man has to leave the Splitting Mountain Axe for him to use. Furthermore, the spirit of the Splitting Mountain Axe has already agreed to recognize Tianshan as its master in the future. Tian Fan Laozu couldn't help but say, "Brother Tian Kong, calm down. Brother Tian Jiang is just saying. Do you think anyone here would be willing to destroy the Splitting Mountain Axe?" Lu Ping listened for a while and understood the situation. He raised his hand and said, "Everyone, Laozu, the guardian artifact spirit is with me." Chapter 940. What would it feel like for a core forging adept to be glared at by 4 adepts at the mid-Dharma stage and above, with all of their auras pressing down on him like a flood? At least, Lu Ping didn't feel anything. After the oncoming aura pressed down on Lu Ping, the strange dragon in the core space only raised its head slightly, and the aura that was enough to scare a normal core forging adept to the point of incontinence disappeared. Looking at the smiling Lu Ping, the few Laozu suppressed their shock. Tianxiang Laozu was the first to ask, "When did this happen? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Tianjiang Laozu, however, said, "That shouldn't be the case. With the current state of the ship, There's no way the artifact spirit could maintain its spirituality for 4,000 years. It should have disappeared a long time ago. Lu Ping glanced at Tianjiang Laozu. With this master craftsman present, it was not easy for Lu Ping to make up a good lie. When I was still in the blood condensation stage, I participated in a trip to Fei Ling Island under the recommendation of Uncle Master Tianlin. I obtained 8 spirit forging pills and a spatial instrument, Qianzhong millet. The artifact spirit, Ruyu, was in the Qianzhong millet. This time, I was able to discover the wreckage of the ship because of Ruyu's reminder. Qianzhong millet? Could this be the spatial instrument that was embedded in the ship? Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It's only a part of it. The real spatial instrument on the ship should be the House of Gold, and the Qianzhong millet is only the key to the formation of the fake terrain in the House of Gold. It's also the key to the House of Gold being able to lead the large spirit vein into it." Tianjiang Laozu was indeed a master craftsman. Hearing this, he immediately thought of something and said, 2 combined spatial instruments. Could it be that the secret of the main cabin of the spatial instrument that Jiao Yuqiang made is hidden in these 2 spatial instruments? Lu Ping shook his head and said, "I found the House of Gold in Laozu's abode in Zhongshuan, East Sea. At that time, the 2 spatial artifacts merged naturally. I don't know how it happened, but I don't know how it happened." Tianjiang Laozu still wanted to ask something, only to hear Tianjiang Elephant Laozu suddenly asking, "That weapon spirit Ryu has already recognized you as its master and was refined by you?" Lu Ping embarrassedly hesitated for a moment before replying, "Yes." Tian Fan, Tian Kong, and the rest of the Laozus looked at each other helplessly. Tian Xiang Laozu then sighed and said, "You need to increase your level of practice as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the ship sets sail in the future, without a mid-Dharma level of practice, you will be under a lot of pressure." Because of the uniqueness of the artifact spirit guarding the treasured ship, the person who was acknowledged by the artifact spirit was usually the true controller of the treasured ship. Only then could they unleash all of the treasured ship's power. Hence, when the treasured ships of the overseas cultivators set sail, it was usually the Dharma adepts who would control the treasured ship's artifact spirit. However, in history, there were cases where the treasured ship's artifact spirit automatically recognized the master. In that case, although the treasured ship could still set sail without the control of a Dharma adept, the power of the treasured ship could not be unleashed in an extremely smooth manner. If not for Lu Ping's status in Jinling, Tianxiang Laozu would probably not hesitate to forcefully seize the artifact spirit in Lu Ping's hands to control the artifact spirit. It was also because of Lu Ping's current level of practice that Tianxiang Laozu was extremely confident in Lu Ping's future achievements. That was why he silently accepted the fact that Lu Ping had refined the treasured ship's artifact spirit. Tian Shui Laozu, who was standing at the side, had long become impatient. She said, "All right, after talking for so long, no one is blaming you for refining the artifact spirit. Take out that artifact spirit called Ruyu in your golden house and let us have a look." Lu Ping scratched the back of his head and said, "I still have to report to the few Laozu. That golden house and Qianzhong millet have already been used by this disciple as a spiritual herb garden. There are some treasures that this disciple has meticulously collected over the years. However, Ruyu seems to have some memory of the method to forge this spatial artifact and embed it into the main cabin of the treasured ship. Can the few Laozu see if you can forge another spatial artifact and embed it into the main cabin?" Tian Shui Laozu immediately frowned as she scolded. "You bastard! Aren't you just making your own plans? The artifact spirit has already been refined by you. In the future, this treasured ship will be under your control. Who would dare to take advantage of you?" Lu Ping's face turned red from Tian Shui Laozu's scolding. He hastily summoned Ruyu out before pulling Qinlian away. Behind him, the few Laozu and Taoist Xianqin were already chattering non-stop as they questioned Ruyu. Since Ruyu had already been refined by Lu Ping, she was very clear about what she should and shouldn't say. Thus, Lu Ping was relieved. Qinlian hurriedly shook off Lu Ping's arm and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I still have many things to ask that artifact spirit of yours. Lu Ping said. Ruyu will temporarily stay here. You can ask her whenever you want. Right now, I have something more important to ask you. Only then did Qinlian calm down and said, What is it? Tell me. Lu Ping threw the jade letter that recorded the refining method of shapeless sword to Qinlian and said, Take a look at this. Qinlian received the jade letter suspiciously and scanned it with his divine sense. Instantly, delight appeared on his face as he said, The complete refining method of shapeless sword, the complete 9 forbidden treasured treasures? Lu Ping smiled complacently and said, If it's not something urgent, I will look for you. How is it? It can be considered a pleasant surprise, right? This shapeless sword's secret art and its refining method are very famous in Fei Ling sect. Although it's only a great divine sword art, this sword art coupled with the shapeless flying sword is something that can't be exchanged for even a supreme divine ability. With this secret art to refine shapeless sword, who in the entire Zhenling would dare to show disrespect to a master refiner like you? After Qinlian became a tool refining grandmaster, there was once a second-generation disciple who ordered Qinlian to refine spirit-nurturing treasures for them as if he was on a mission. A dignified tool refining grandmaster was ordered around, and in the end, it was the Sky River Patriarch who came out to reprimand him. In the end, it was still a matter of strength. Although Qinlian had advanced to the late core forging realm, his strength could only be regarded as outstanding among cultivators of the same level. Although he could condense spirit-nurturing treasures and refine spirit-nurturing treasures, he didn't have a trump card. If it was Lu Ping, how many people in the entire Zhenling would dare to show off in front of him? Qinlian was surprised and said, You want to make the shapeless sword's secret art public to the cultivators of the sect? Lu Ping smiled and said, Half of it. After all, this shapeless sword's secret art is a unique skill. Dufeng, Zhongjian, and Ma Yu are all sword cultivators, and we also have a few disciples who practice swordsmanship. This shapeless sword's secret art should be very attractive to them. When the time comes, we can leave the specific measures to the Laozu in the sect to deal with. In any case, this shapeless sword's secret art can't be popularized. With that, Lu Ping handed the Aquaslite sword to Qinlian and said, The Aquaslite sword's grade has been improved by you. Now, it only lacks one spirit-nurturing treasure restriction to become a spirit-nurturing grade magic treasure. Try to improve it as much as possible and see if you can condense the remaining 3 spirit-nurturing treasures. Whenever Lu Ping handed over a magic treasure to Qinlian to improve, it was usually when he was about to go into seclusion or when he didn't have a big task to complete. Lu Ping was surprised and asked, You're going into seclusion again? Lu Ping nodded and said, Yes, just keep this a secret. Qinlian was even more shocked when he saw how serious Lu Ping was. This time, Lu Ping didn't have the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman with him. However, Lu Ping's current cultivation wasn't something that could be compared to when he had yet to condense the lightning tribulation water and condense a 9th-grade golden core. With just a 6-colored restriction-breaking talisman, Lu Ping reopened the protective shield of the teleportation formation and threw down a highest-grade spirit stone to activate the formation. When his vision became clear again, Lu Ping had already stepped onto Fei Ling Island for the 3rd time. Chapter 941. Fei Ling Island was still filled with dense spirit energy. However, during the time Lu Ping was away, the 7 large spirit veins at the top of Fei Ling Island had become a bit scattered due to the absence of Linglong's care. After Lu Ping summoned Linglong again, the spirit energy on the entire Fei Ling Island immediately became regulated again. Lu Ping opened the 2 spirit pet pouches and released Debao and Lu Xiaohai. He said, You two find a place to cultivate yourselves. Debao followed Dujelua to Hun Mara, who had sneaked into the spirit stone vein on Frost Island. He also stole the top-grade spirit stones contained in the vein. Although the moral luos in the Spirit Stone mine were all wiped out in just half a year, De Bayo still managed to steal 20 top-grade Spirit Stones from the Spirit Stone mine. As for the high-grade Spirit Stones, De Bayo only handed over 500 top-grade Spirit Stones to Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't care how many top-grade Spirit Stones he had hidden away. The reason why Lu Ping brought these two was because their cultivation was too low. Currently, they were only at the early stage of core forging. The spirit energy on Fei Ling Mountain was dense, but only Lu Ping and his two spirit pets were enjoying the 7 large spirit veins. Lu Ping didn't believe that the strength of these two people wouldn't improve while he was in seclusion. After sending the two away, he opened the spirit beast pouch that contained the purple crystal bees. The 3,000-year-old spirit herb garden that he found last time was still open, so the bees didn't have to stay idle. On the peak, Lu Ping once again condensed the 7 large spirit veins. The huge Linglong wine cauldron floated above his head, and the thick spirit energy pillar soared into the sky. However, after Lu Ping walked into the spirit energy pillar and began to cultivate, as Lu Ping breathed, the huge spirit energy pillar suddenly shrank and expanded, and gradually began to have a rhythm. Originally, the spirit energy pillar would gradually dissipate after rushing into the sky of Fei Ling Mountain. However, this time, when the spirit energy pillar rushed into the sky, every time Lu Ping inhaled, not only did the entire spirit energy pillar shrink, but most of the scattered spirit energy that rushed into the sky also began to flow back into the spirit energy pillar from all directions. From afar, the dense milky white spirit energy on the peak of Fei Ling Mountain formed a huge mushroom-shaped spirit energy cloud with Lu Ping's cultivation. At this time, Lu Ping had already fallen into a deep state of cultivation. All of his divine thoughts and mind began to shrink into the core space, or more precisely, into the gold core. The strange dragon in the gold core shook its head and tail, as if it couldn't wait. Lu Ping's divine thoughts seemed to have a feeling of constantly changing. The strange dragon seemed to sense something, and suddenly came back to its senses. It opened its mouth towards Lu Ping's divine sense and inhaled. Lu Ping suddenly felt as if the world was spinning, and when his divine sense calmed down, Lu Ping finally felt his vision clear, but in front of Lu Ping was a cage formed by 9 runes. Lu Ping suddenly looked back, and saw that his body had turned into a snake's body, a fish's tail, and a crocodile's claws. Although he couldn't see his head, he knew that his divine sense was completely attached to the strange dragon in the golden core. Although he had felt this many times before, that feeling was more like an illusion. But now, he really felt that the strange dragon was actually born to be one with Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked outside the cage, and saw that the sky and the ground were filled with a thick blue and purple mist. Only the outside of the cage was a thin layer of mist, and it seemed inharmonious with the blue and purple mist that pervaded the surroundings. 2 groups of things formed by the 9 runes surrounded the cage that he was in, faintly discernible in the mist. In the mist, there were a few more groups of things formed by runes, but they were clearly not as close as the 2 groups. And in the mist, Lu Ping could also feel that there were 13 things that were connected to his mind. As long as he could break out of this cage, including the things formed by the runes, all of these things would gather on his body. Lu Ping knew that the blue and purple mist was the Dan Xia purple mist, and the layer of things that were close to the 9 runes was the pure yang qi that he had obtained from the pure yang soul of the Ying Tian Sect's pure yang cultivator, Fei Tian Laozu. The things formed by the runes were the divine ability talismans, and the 13 things that were connected to his mind were naturally the life gentian formation. Previously, Lu Ping had used his divine sense to look inside, and saw these things in the core space. But now, when Lu Ping's mind was attached to the strange dragon, he saw these things again, and what followed was a completely new feeling. Lu Ping had never felt so anxious before, so it turned out that this strange dragon was originally one with him. Lu Ping sighed in his heart, and his divine sense began to gather, wanting to return to his body. However, something that scared Lu Ping finally happened. No matter how hard Lu Ping tried, he could no longer separate his divine sense from the strange dragon's body. Lu Ping was very anxious, and only then did he remember that when a cultivator advanced to the Dharma stage, his divine sense would become one with his Dharma. If Lu Ping wanted to return his divine sense, then he had to help this strange dragon break out of the 9 runes cage, and successfully advance to the Dharma stage. However, the 9 runes seemed to be unbreakable, and no matter what the strange dragon did, it could not break out of the seal of the 9 runes. Lu Ping's heart became more and more anxious, and he could not help but want to roar in anger. Only then did he remember that he was only a ball of divine sense. How could he roar? However, just as this thought surfaced in his mind, he heard a strange roar suddenly come from his mouth. Lu Ping was stunned. Why was there a roar? Then, Lu Ping suddenly came to a realization. Could it be this strange dragon? Lu Ping was surprised, and curiously wanted to roar again, to see what was going on. Why would this Dharma roar? Could it really be alive? However, before Lu Ping could put this idea into action, he suddenly saw that the Danxia purple mist, which was originally calm outside the cage, suddenly boiled after this roar, like a huge wave surging out of the sea. Like a tsunami, wave after wave came towards the cage. The layer of pure yang essence also began to shake, and strands of essence were peeled off from it, also gathering in the cage. And at this time, the natal gentian formation that was hidden in the depths of the Danxia purple mist also suddenly began to operate, and the diffusing Danxia purple mist suddenly began to condense, and outside the core space, an endless amount of essence began to seep into the core space, and then replenish the condensing Danxia purple mist. At this moment, Lu Ping's bloodline was like a surging river. The sound of his blood flowing through his veins sounded as if it wanted to annihilate everything in its path. At the foot of Failing Mountain, about half of the purple crystal bees were scared to death when the strange roar sounded. The purple crystal bee king hid in the sea of flowers, shivering. The giant white-fronted tiger crouched on the ground, covering its eyes and ears with its 2 front paws. The spirit-seeking mouse kept digging deeper into the ground. Behind Lu Ping, the wine cauldron had been knocked over and the bottom of the cauldron couldn't be seen. Ling Long was hiding somewhere in the cauldron. Outside the heart core, the clouds above the green sail gathered and dispersed, but no matter what, they couldn't form a complete Peng artifact spirit. On the top of Failing Mountain, the huge spiritual pillar was like a ball of dough that was being kneaded at will, constantly changing its shape, but it could not emit even a trace of spiritual energy to the outside of Failing Island. Just like the Danxia purple mist in the core space, the spiritual energy on the top of Failing Mountain also began to condense and condense above Lu Ping's head. Gradually, a strange spiritual energy Jiao dragon that looked exactly the same as the one in the golden core cage in Lu Ping's heart core space appeared above his head, but it was many times bigger. The huge head of the strange dragon seemed to be extremely excited at the moment it was formed. It shook its head and wagged its tail, swimming back and forth on the top of Failing Mountain, then suddenly opened its huge mouth, as if it was going to roar again excitedly. Roar! The roar sounded as the strange spiritual energy dragon opened its mouth, but it was not the strange spiritual energy dragon that was roaring. Like the previous roar, it seemed to come from Lu Ping's body, but it also seemed to come from all directions of Failing Mountain, making it hard to fathom. Chapter 942. Just as the second roar sounded, in Lu Ping's core space, the 12 gentian beads, which were originally buried by the Danxia purple mist and could only be sensed by the mind, suddenly shone brightly. The colorful light directly penetrated the Danxia purple mist and echoed with the giant roar of the strange dragon. Immediately after, a huge white jade lotus flower bloomed below the golden core cage. Mysterious runes flickered on the petals, forming a huge lotus flower array diagram. The 12 elemental chin beads suddenly shook, and the 5-colored light became even brighter than before. Just as the 12 gentian formation began to operate in the core space, the Danxia purple mist suddenly condensed faster. Even so, as the strange dragon in the cage swallowed like a whale, the danxia purple mist that Lu Ping had accumulated in the core space for decades was obviously not enough to keep up with the consumption. However, Lu Ping seemed to be prepared for this. Just as the 12 elemental star array began to operate, in the sky above Fei Ling Mountain, around the gigantic strange flood dragon made of spiritual energy, the projection of 12 gigantic elemental star beads appeared around the mountain, surrounding the entire mountain. After that, a huge white jade lotus gradually solidified on the peak. Looking from afar, it was as if the entire failing peak was covered by a huge white jade lotus. The entire failing peak was surrounded by the 12 gentian formation at this moment. Before the swaggering strange dragon could react, it was trapped in the gentian formation. The gentian formation began to operate slowly. Spirit gathering. Under the pressure of the formation, an extremely pure spirit energy spurted out from the mouth of the strange dragon and fell directly into the center of the white lotus formation. Lu Ping sat there with his legs crossed. Before the pure spirit energy touched his body, it suddenly disappeared around Lu Ping's body. It seemed that the space around Lu Ping had begun to change. The North Sea wave listening technique was operated to the extreme by Lu Ping. The blood flowing in his veins was no longer the sound of a rushing river, but the roaring of huge waves and tsunamis. Every time the heart beat, it was as if the earth was shaking. Every time it shook, it would drive the great formation covering the entire peak of Failing Mountain to operate. Every time the great formation operated, the strange flood dragon, which shook its head and wagged its tail but was unable to break free from the shackles of the Yuanshan Great Formation, had no choice but to spit out the purest spiritual energy condensed in its body. Due to the spirit-gathering technique cast by the Yuanshan Array Formation, the spiritual energy released by the 7 large spirit veins of Fei Ling's sect was gathered together to form this strange dragon. The pure spiritual energy was then refined by Lu Ping's North Sea Wave listening spell, and turned into pure true essence that seeped into the heart core space, replenishing the purple mist. Then, it was completely absorbed by the strange dragon in the golden core cage. Even so, the strange dragon was like a bottomless pit. The danxia purple mist in the core space was still in a state where it could not make up for the loss. Lu Ping was anxious. At this time, his divine will was still trapped in the strange dragon's body. He could sense that if the strange dragon had the power to break free, it could completely break out of the golden core cage. However, Lu Ping's intuition told him that if he allowed the strange dragon to absorb the danxia purple mist until it reached the final state, then he could break out of the golden core cage. Perhaps he could gain more benefits. Lu Ping could only suppress the anxiety in his heart and operate the life gentian formation with all his strength. He locked up all the spirit energy in the failing sect's spirit veins and refined it into the danxia purple mist to satisfy the strange dragon's absorption. However, the impact of such a large amount of spirit energy entering his body was really a test for Lu Ping's physical body. This was also because Lu Ping had previously taken several types of body-strengthening spirit pills, which made his physical body far stronger than that of ordinary Dharma adepts. Otherwise, when faced with such a level of spirit energy, it was not impossible for Lu Ping's entire physical body to be melted by the spirit energy. Even so, if this dragged on for too long, the strange dragon would still not be able to absorb the spirit energy to its peak state, and Lu Ping's physical body would still collapse. Lu Ping's mind moved, and the gentian formation changed again. Originally, the gentian formation had covered the entire Failing Mountain and trapped the strange dragon formed by the spirit energy of the 7 spirit veins. Now, the white lotus formation suddenly shone brightly with silver light. The colorful light emitted by the 12 gentian pearls solidified and formed a colorful net at the peak of the mountain, firmly trapping the strange dragon in the colorful light net. The light net continued to shrink, and the strange dragon seemed to have a mind of its own as it began to struggle continuously. Lu Ping knew that it was not that the strange dragon had a mind of its own, but that as Lu Ping's light net continued to shrink, it was also continuously compressing the strange dragon formed by the spirit energy. At the same time, it was also filtering and removing the impurities in the spirit energy, leaving behind the purest essence for the North Sea wave listening technique to quickly refine into the core space. At this moment, the strange dragon in the gened and cage seemed to sense something. Its wriggling body suddenly shook, and with a light swing of its tail, it broke the previously unbreakable 9 seal inscriptions. Lu Ping's mind suddenly trembled, and he suddenly discovered that the body of the strange dragon had completely fused with Lu Ping's mind. The body of the strange dragon was completely under Lu Ping's control. At this moment, the strange dragon seemed to be a part of Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping knew that the last opportunity had arrived. With a thought, the strange dragon streaked across the 9 seal inscriptions. Using all 4 limbs, it suddenly grabbed the 9 seal inscriptions that were starting to break apart, and then drew a semicircle in the cage. Turning around, it directly rammed into the broken seal inscription's cage. Crackle! The cage was rammed by the horn on top of its head, as if it was breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The Jindan cage that was previously indestructible was now so easily broken. The Jindan broke, and the law was born. At this moment, the strange dragon finally broke through the shackles of the Jindan, and there was no longer anything in the world that could restrict it. The strange dragon opened its mouth, and the 9 broken Jindan seal inscriptions were swallowed by the strange dragon. An inverted palm-sized crescent white scale appeared below the strange dragon's neck, and the 9 seal inscriptions intertwined on the white scale. Lu Ping's mind moved. Could this be the reverse scale? The monstrous serpent opened its mouth and sucked in all the remaining purple mist in the core space. The serpent then swam around in the core space for a short while, as if it was patrolling its own territory, before disappearing into thin air. This was clearly a spatial ability. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped flowing in the sky above Fei Ling Peak, and the entire world stopped the moment the strange dragon appeared. A 3-foot-long strange dragon suddenly appeared above the head of the spirit energy strange dragon that was imprisoned by Lu Ping's multicolored light net. The strange dragon looked at the huge spirit energy strange dragon under its feet, and then opened its mouth. The spirit energy strange dragon immediately deflated like a balloon, and the strange dragon's body rapidly expanded in an instant. 3 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. When the strange dragon's body expanded to 30 feet, the spirit energy strange dragon under its feet, which was originally much larger than 30 feet, had been completely devoured. The monstrous serpent wriggled through the air, drawing a strange yet profound trajectory in the air. Layers of golden scales began to outline and appear on the surface of the monstrous serpent's body. Its entire body was immediately covered in a layer of golden light, as if announcing its birth in this world. Roar! Everything was spirituality, and the entire Fei Ling Mountain was worshipping, and countless spirit flowers and rare herbs were falling toward Fei Ling Mountain. Linglong completely covered herself with the mouth of the cauldron, and countless auspicious clouds surged up from the cloud's sail. The 7 treasures thunder calabash was as obedient as a child who had made a mistake, and the 4 flying swords were facing up, ready to be used at any time. The trembling sound of the swords resounded through the entire Fei Ling Island. De Bao had already fainted in the cave, and every amethyst wasp under the blood condensation realm was alive. The hanging eyes white tiger buried its head in its face and remained motionless. The entire Fei Ling Mountain was trembling, and the top of Fei Ling Mountain, which was supplied with spirit energy by the 7 large spirit veins, actually had a spirit energy vacuum at this moment. 4,000 years ago, Fei Ling Island was the only large island in the North Sea, but at this moment, the spirit energy within a radius of 1,000 years was flowing back to the top of Fei Ling Mountain. A celestial phenomenon within a radius of 1,000 miles. If this was in the cultivation world, it would be enough to shake the entire cultivation world of humans and demons. Jinling would immediately become the target of the entire cultivation world. At this moment, on Fei Ling Island, which was 90,000 feet deep in the sea, no one would be able to see this celestial phenomenon no matter how big it was. The reason why Lu Ping cultivated in seclusion at Fei Ling Mountain, other than the spirit veins here, was also because he had hidden his own intentions. Even so, he would never have thought that such a vast celestial phenomenon would occur when he advanced to the Dharma manifestation realm. What he really wanted to hide was the strange Dharma manifestation that he had formed. Dharma manifestation. At this moment, Lu Ping finally felt the huge changes that had occurred in his body. However, the current Lu Ping had no time to care about these huge changes. Lu Ping looked at the strange dragon wantonly swimming above his head with fiery eyes. It had the body of a snake, the claws of a crocodile, the tail of a carp, the antlers of a deer, the ears of a cow, and the mane of a horse. This strange dragon looked extremely strange to the entire cultivation world, but in Lu Ping's eyes, it was a supreme holy object. Dragon? The Dharma manifestation of the dragon. The dragon, which was regarded as one of the 7 sages of heaven and earth by the entire cultivation world, was just a distant relative who had inherited the bloodline of the dragon clan in Lu Ping's eyes. How could it be compared to a dragon? This was a secret that Lu Ping had kept to himself for more than 100 years. But now, Lu Ping was finally able to explain it in such a way. Although his explanation wasn't perfect, he was still far from being able to fully outline the divine artifact in his heart. But the avatar form was only the 6th transformation of the 9 transformations of the true spirit. Lu Ping still had a chance to complete the remaining 3 transformations while improving his cultivation base. At that time, the avatar form of the true spirit would be unrivaled in the world. Chapter 943. One of the most important signs of a practitioner achieving the Dharma stage was the awakening of spatial powers. Lu Ping could clearly feel that as the dragon Dharma power circled in the sky, his divine will could instantly spread out nearly 30 miles from the peak of Fei Ling Mountain. There was a saying in the world of practitioners, "Summon the spirit with one's body." It actually meant that a great adept who had reached the late Dharma stage could easily control everything within a 30-mile radius. Within this 30-mile radius, almost no one could escape the pursuit of a great adept. A great Dharma adept could easily decide the life and death of a person. The 30-mile radius of his divine will was the hallmark of a great Dharma adept, and it was also the furthest range that a great Dharma adept's spatial powers could reach. Lu Ping's level of practice was naturally far below that of a late Dharma adept, but his divine will could actually sense everything within a 30-mile radius through his Dharma power. Lu Ping could even feel that if he wanted to, he could use his spatial powers to appear anywhere within a 30-mile radius. It was just that on the peak of Fei Ling Mountain, Lu Ping did not dare to use his spatial powers carelessly. When Fei Ling Island had sunk to the bottom of the sea, it had caused the entire island's space to shatter, break, collapse, and other such spatial traps. Previously, Lu Ping could only roughly sense these dangerous areas, but now, he could clearly sense any spatial trap within a 30-mile radius through his divine will. As the dragon Dharma power circled the peak of Fei Ling Mountain, there were always a number of powerful talismans circling around the Dharma power. When a Dharma power was first formed, the talismans would be attracted by the origin essence, and this was the best opportunity to form his own special powers. If the Dharma power fell into the core space, these talismans that Lu Ping had painstakingly formed would once again be converted into essential inner yuan essence for the Dharma power to absorb. In the end, all they could do was increase Lu Ping's level of practice by a tiny bit. With a thought, Lu Ping's dragon Dharma power turned around and swung its tail, wrapping all the talismans together. The golden eyes of the dragon Dharma power suddenly opened, and a ray of golden light shone on one of the talismans. This talisman instantly flashed with a golden light, and the inscriptions on the surface of the talisman began to flash one by one. The dragon Dharma power spat out a gust of essential essence, which formed a blue dragon ball in midair. The talisman flickered and stuck itself onto the surface of the dragon ball. The inscriptions on the talisman lit up one by one, imprinting themselves onto the surface of the dragon ball. One after another, until the 7th talisman pattern appeared. Suddenly, the talisman pattern began to flicker. Lu Ping furrowed his brows and watched as the talisman suddenly fell off the surface of the dragon pearl. The 6 talisman patterns that were previously imprinted on the dragon pearl also disappeared. The dragon Dharma power opened its mouth and inhaled, and the dragon ball turned back into essential essence, and was swallowed by the Dharma power. At the same time, the talisman that was condensed from Lu Ping's true essence also dispersed into essential essence, and was swallowed by the dragon Dharma power. This was the waterspout that Lu Ping had condensed. In the past, his teacher, Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, had relied on this great spell to dominate the North Sea when he was still at the core forging stage. Who would have thought that Lu Ping's first attempt to condense the seed of this spell would end in failure? However, the talisman was condensed from the essence of Lu Ping's true essence. Even if it couldn't become a life-bonded great spell, it could still be used to increase one's cultivation. Although this kind of increase was negligible for Lu Ping, it was still better than nothing. However, condensing the talisman did not mean that one could successfully condense the seed of the spell and become a life-bonded great spell. The talisman that Lu Ping had condensed in the core space over the years was far from this type of talisman. It wasn't as if Lu Ping didn't have the opportunity to condense another life-bonded great spell. Lu Ping's divine sense pointed into the distance. The dragon Dharma power turned around and once again produced a dragon ball condensed from essential essence. The talisman transformed from the invisible sword stuck to the dragon ball. Lines of inscriptions began to be imprinted on the dragon ball. In the end, all 9 inscriptions were successfully imprinted, and the talisman completely integrated into the dragon ball. The dragon Dharma power seemed to sense that the seed imprinted with the talisman would bring great benefits to it. It shook its head and wagged its tail, as if celebrating something. Then, it swallowed the dragon ball into its stomach. Immediately after, Lu Ping saw that on the reverse scale below the dragon Dharma power's neck, one of the broken inscriptions that had swallowed the 9 broken inscriptions of the golden core began to slowly repair itself. For a core forging stage cultivator to successfully form a top-grade golden core, it not only meant that they would be able to successfully advance to the transcendence stage. At the same time, it also meant that after advancing to the transcendence stage, a third meaning was that the surface of the golden core marked the number of inscriptions that would appear. This usually indicated the maximum number of life-bonded great spells that a cultivator could condense after advancing to the transcendence stage. In other words, a cultivator would need to have at least a 7th grade golden core in order to advance to the transcendence stage. A cultivator in the transcendence stage could at most condense 7 life-bonded great spells. An 8th grade golden core could condense 8 life-bonded great spells, and a 9th grade golden core could condense a maximum of 9 life-bonded great spells. Lu Ping's heart leaped with joy. If a transcendent stage cultivator could condense 1 life-bonded great spell, he would be able to stand out among the cultivators of the same stage. What Lu Ping was worried about was whether he would be able to condense 1 life-bonded great spell. As long as he could condense 1 life-bonded great spell seed, with Lu Ping's ability, he would not be afraid even if he met a transcendence adept who had condensed 2 or 3 life-bonded great spells. Now that Lu Ping could condense 1 life-bonded great spell seed, he could rest easy. What was left was just a matter of how many life-bonded great spells he could condense. Furthermore, the shapeless sword spell was one of the most unique great spells. Its power did not lie in the power of the sword technique itself, but in the word shapeless. After condensing it into a life-bonded great spell, the power of the shapeless sword spell would increase. In addition, Lu Ping had obtained the complete method of refining the shapeless sword spell. Just this spell alone would be comparable to other transcendence adepts condensing 2 or 3 life-bonded great spells. The 3rd life-bonded great spell talisman condensed the great spell, the flying spiral serial kill. This was also a sword technique spell, and it was one of the 4 basic great spells of the Boiling Sky Supreme Sword Technique. In order to achieve the Boiling Sky Supreme Sword Technique, one would first have to refine the 4 basic great spells into a life-bonded great spell. It was a pity that this great spell that Lu Ping had first mastered was not able to condense into a life-bonded great spell seed. Instead, the talisman condensed from the 4th sword technique spell, the Seeping Water Sword Technique, was successfully imprinted on the dragon pearl. After the Dharma power swallowed the dragon pearl, the second seal on the reverse scale was also repaired by the seal formed by the seeping water sword technique, becoming Lu Ping's second life-bonded great spell. The fifth life-bonded great spell talisman was the Water Divine Thunder spell that Lu Ping had recently mastered. Perhaps it was because Lu Ping had condensed the water of Calamity Thunder, but the inscription of this talisman was unusually smooth. Very quickly, the third life-bonded great spell seed condensed from the essence was also swallowed by the Dharma power, and the third seal on the reverse scale also began to be repaired. The sixth spell that Lu Ping had condensed was the Water Curtain Heaven spell. This was a protective great spell that Lu Ping had condensed from 9 layers of Shield of Vigor. It was a pity that the Dharma power did not even care about this spell talisman, and directly shattered it, swallowing the essence of the vital essence condensed from the talisman. The last 2 remaining magical spell talismans were the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art and the Sea of Mulberry Fields spell. These were originally the 12 orthodox defensive spells of the North Sea Wave listening technique. These were the spells that Lu Ping had truly used to condense his own great magical power. However, these 12 spells had undergone a mutation when Lu Ping had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm. The 6 magical spells of the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art had condensed into 1 complete magical spell talisman, while the other 6 magical spells of the Sea of Mulberry Fields spell had condensed into another complete magical spell talisman, using the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art as the center. These 2 talismans had become a whole, and the 6 magical spells condensed into 1 did not affect the performance of each of them. Just like the branches of a tree, any branch that was broken off and planted in the soil could also grow into a towering tree, and when the branches were condensed together, it would still be a tree. The 2 magical spell talismans formed by the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art were like 2 towering trees. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and decided to first inscribe the seed of the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art. However, after the seed was condensed from the essence of the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art, Lu Ping discovered that the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art had much more runes than the other magical spell talismans. It was to the point that the Dragon Ball condensed from the essence of the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art couldn't withstand it. At this time, the Dragon Law Idol suddenly became extremely excited. It opened its huge mouth, and a small column of essence of the Dragon Ball shot out from its mouth. The essence of the Dragon Law Idol continuously poured into the Dragon Ball. The volume of the Dragon Ball didn't increase in the slightest, but the runes that were originally inscribed on the surface of the Dragon Ball were constantly shrinking. Only when all the runes in the magical spell talisman had been inscribed on the surface of the Dragon Ball did the Dragon Law Idol stop injecting the essence of the Dragon Ball. There were a total of 81 runes. Originally, a divine art talisman would only have 9 runes. Could it be because this magical spell talisman had condensed 6 sword techniques? Under Lu Ping's puzzled and seemingly enlightened gaze, the Dragon Law Idol didn't immediately swallow the Dragon Ball into its abdomen. Instead, it excitedly circled around the Dragon Ball. Then, it swallowed the Dragon Ball into its abdomen with a solemn attitude that was somewhat unbelievable to Lu Ping. Under Lu Ping's expectant gaze, the Dragon Law Idol suddenly let out a loud dragon roar after swallowing the Dragon Ball into its abdomen. The fine golden scales all over its body suddenly exploded, and a fine sword aura shot out from the 129,600 exploded scales. The entire Failing Mountain was covered by the fine sword aura. Lu Ping was shocked. The Dragon Law Idol was closely related to Lu Ping. Lu Ping could clearly sense that if this sword aura was allowed to wreak havoc, most of the entire Failing Mountain would be destroyed in this sword aura. Fortunately, Lu Ping's natal gentian array was still shrouding the top of Failing Mountain. Under the command of Lu Ping's divine thought, the natal gentian array was immediately launched, shrouding the 120,000 sword aura. Fortunately, this sword chi had the same origin as the Yuanshan Grand Array. When the sword chi scattered on the protective barrier of the Yuanshan Grand Array, it immediately melted. Then, it turned into surging quintessential essence, and was absorbed by the Yuanchen Grand Array. Then, countless changes began to occur on the 12 Yuanchen beads and the White Lotus Array diagram. However, Lu Ping couldn't care about the Gentian Array at this time, because something that made him incredibly excited happened. Chapter 944. Who could directly achieve a supreme power when they advance to the Dharma form stage? In any case, Lu Ping himself had never heard of such a thing in the cultivation world, but it had happened to Lu Ping. After the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art, which was originally formed from the 6 Paths talisman charms, was imprinted on the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art, and absorbed by his avatar, it almost caused Lu Ping's avatar to fall into chaos. Fortunately, Lu Ping reacted in time. The sword chi that shot out was of the same origin, and the natal Gentian formation had extraordinary power. This allowed Lu Ping to completely block the 120,000 sword chi that shot out. Otherwise, who knew how much of Fei Ling Mountain would have been completely destroyed? However, it was also because of this burst of sword chi that Lu Ping could finally confirm that after the Sea of All Rivers sword technique was condensed into a magical power seed by the Dharma form, it had actually been pushed all the way to the level of a supreme power. At this moment, Lu Ping's mood could be said to be both nervous and pleasantly surprised. His eyes were fixed on the reverse scale below the Dharma form's neck. The 4th talisman pattern was slowly being repaired. This 4th talisman marking was obviously extremely different from the previous 3 talisman markings. After the talisman marking was completely repaired, there were still other talisman markings that appeared infused with this talisman marking, causing this talisman marking to seem even more resplendent, and it was even to the extent that the previous 3 talisman markings that had taken form were completely overshadowed by this talisman marking. The Dharma form of the dragon was shrinking rapidly. Perhaps it was because the Dharma form of the dragon used its origin essence to condense a magical power seed. Every time Lu Ping successfully condensed a magical power seed, the Dharma form of the dragon would shrink by a foot. However, after the Sea of All Rivers sword technique was successfully condensed, the Dharma form of the dragon had shrunk by more than 3 feet. Although the sword technique of the Sea of All Rivers sword technique made Lu Ping very happy, Lu Ping had some other worries at this time. Just as the number of natal great powers condensed was affected by the grade of the golden elixir, in fact, the number of supreme great powers condensed was also affected by the grade of the golden elixir. Usually, a core forging adept with a 7th grade Dan could only condense 1 supreme great power out of the 7 natal great powers, but this was only a possibility. It was already extremely difficult for a normal adept to condense 1 supreme great power, let alone condensing a few. Most early Dharma adepts could not condense a supreme great power in their entire lives. On the other hand, a cultivator who had an 8th grade Dan and advanced to the Dharma phase would naturally be able to condense 2 supreme powers. Similarly, a cultivator who had a 9th grade Dan and advanced to the Dharma phase would at most be able to condense 3 supreme powers. Usually, the formation of a supreme great power was formed from several great spells as the foundation of the supreme great powers, and then successfully condensed the supreme great powers. Just as the 100 Rivers sword technique supreme great powers was originally formed from the combination of 6 great sword techniques, the Boiling Sky sword technique supreme great powers was formed from the combination of 4 great sword techniques, the Seeping Water sword technique, the Flying Spiral Chain Slash, and the other 3 great sword techniques, and Tianlin Laozu's supreme great powers, Falling Flowers, was also formed from the combination of 5 great spells, including the 10,000 Forms Forest Wall. Usually, if a practitioner wanted to condense a supreme great power, they would first need to condense a few of the basic supreme great powers into the seed of the supreme great powers. And due to the influence of the grade of the golden elixir before the cultivator advanced to the Dharma form, a practitioner could at most condense 9 supreme great powers, and this would take up a cultivator's originally few golden elixir runes. Once these few golden elixir runes were combined and condensed into a supreme great power, these few golden elixir runes that were repaired by the golden elixir runes would completely disappear, and a brand new supreme great power rune would be condensed. Usually, when a cultivator condensed a supreme great power, they had to be meticulous because every supreme great power required at least 3 or more supreme great powers as the foundation. Some powerful supreme great powers even required 4 or 5 foundation great powers to be successfully condensed. Therefore, after a cultivator advanced to the Dharma form stage, they had to be meticulous about the opportunity to condense 9 supreme great powers, so that they could have the opportunity to condense 1 or 2 supreme great powers. This was what Lu Ping was worried about. Previously, he had already condensed 3 golden elixir runes and had already occupied 3 golden elixir runes. After the 100 rivers into the sea sword technique was directly promoted to a supreme great power, Lu Ping then remembered that the 100 rivers into the sea sword technique was condensed from 6 supreme great powers. According to the usual pattern of a cultivator promoting a supreme divine ability, wouldn't that mean that after the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art was promoted to the level of a supreme divine ability, the remaining 6 golden core runes on the reverse scale had already been completely occupied by the 6 great divine abilities that made up the supreme divine ability? In this case, didn't that mean that Lu Ping no longer had any golden elixir runes to endure the condensation of the other supreme great powers? Lu Ping tried his best to look at the golden light on the reverse scale. However, even though green light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes, he still couldn't see through the layer of golden light. Just as Lu Ping appeared to be deeply worried, the 4th golden elixir rune condensed and strengthened by the supreme great powers was finally completed. Lu Ping couldn't wait to look at the reverse scale. When he saw that there were still 5 broken golden elixir runes after the 4th supreme great power seed rune, he heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ping still had the opportunity to condense his natural great powers. Could it be that before condensing his natural great powers, he could condense the Foundation's supreme great powers into a complete supreme great power talisman? In this way, he could avoid wasting the few golden elixir runes? Wouldn't that mean that Lu Ping could continue to use the saved golden elixir runes to condense his natural great powers? He might even have the opportunity to condense the 4th or even the 5th natural great powers, breaking the rule that a cultivator could only condense 3 natural great powers at most? Lu Ping's heart was burning with passion. He couldn't help but look at the last new supreme great powers talisman that was also condensed from 6 supreme great powers, the art of changing seas and mulberry fields. This time, Lu Ping had learned his lesson. When the Dharma form of the dragon used the origin essence to condense the dragon ball, it didn't stop the continuous input of the origin essence. Therefore, although the art of changing seas and mulberry fields took a long time to inscribe, there were no problems along the way. When the supreme great powers finished inscribing the seed, the Dharma form of the dragon, which had shrunk by 3 feet, opened its mouth and swallowed the seed. The natural gentian formation was ready, but he saw a flowing light appear around the body of the Dharma form, and after a cycle, the water disappeared. Lu Ping was stunned. He didn't expect such a situation. When he turned to look again, the reverse scale under the Dharma form's neck was flashing with a warm light, and the 5th golden elixir rune had begun to repair. At the same time, the Dharma form of the dragon, which had shrunk by 3 feet due to condensing the art of changing seas and mulberry fields, suddenly grew by 3 feet. Lu Ping thought of the 120,000 sword cheese that had burst out when he condensed the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art. If he had been prepared at that time, and could have digested the 120,000 sword cheese in the body of the Dharma form, perhaps the Dharma form of the dragon could have grown by 3 feet. The warm light dissipated, and the broken 5th golden elixir rune on the silver-white reverse scale had been repaired and strengthened. It was almost the same size as the 4th golden elixir rune, and there were still 4 broken golden elixir runes on the reverse scale, waiting for Lu Ping to condense his natural great powers in the future. 3 natural great powers, 2 natural supreme great powers, and a cultivator who had just advanced to the Dharma form stage. If word of this got out, the shock to the cultivation world would be no less than the thousandly celestial phenomenon caused by Lu Ping's advancement to the Dharma form stage. Lu Ping couldn't wait to take out a few of his natural great powers to practice on the spot, but Failing Mountain was really not a good place to practice his natural great powers. It was a small matter to destroy such a lively training ground, but looking at the space traps hidden in the void, if they caused the space of the training ground to collapse or the formation to fail, and the 90,000 feet deep seawater above his head to pour down, then Lu Ping's little life would really be forfeit. Lu Ping calmed his mind, and at this moment, he suddenly noticed that the natural Genshin Great Formation that appeared along with the Dharma form of the dragon had changed. Just as Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon swallowed the 7 large spirit veins that were imprisoned in the sky above Failing Island, the natural Genshin treasures that were connected to Lu Ping's mind were the first to benefit. Runes began to form on the surface of the white jade lotus, and then the colorful light on the surface of the 12 Genshin pearls began to expand and contract. Especially after Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon swallowed the 120,000 sword chi condensed from the original essence of the Dharma form of the dragon, the changes of the 13 natural great treasures became even more intense. Lu Ping opened his mouth and inhaled, and the huge Dharma form of the dragon immediately shrank to the size of a foot and disappeared into Lu Ping's mouth. In the core space, the 13 natural Genshin treasures each shot out 13 beams of light, which connected with the Dharma form of the dragon in the center. As the true essence of the dragon swallowed and spat out by the Dharma form, each formed a cycle, and the speed at which the runes formed on the surface of the natural great treasures increased again. The first to be completed was the white jade lotus that the Dharma form had used as a foothold. Perhaps because it was close to the Dharma form, the large amount of original essence that the Dharma form had swallowed and spat out benefited the white jade lotus first. Countless runes finally formed a complete spirit-nurturing treasure, condensing at the core of the white jade lotus. The white jade lotus had become a spirit-nurturing treasure that had condensed 8 spirit-nurturing treasures. Immediately after, the 12 Genshin pearls changed one after another. Mysterious runes streaked across the surface of the Genshin pearls, but they were quickly covered by the colorful light emitted by the Genshin pearls. Majestic auras appeared on the 12 Genshin pearls one after another, and they also became 12 spirit-nurturing treasures that had condensed 8 spirit-nurturing treasures. Just as the whole Genshin Great Formation was upgraded by one level, the Dharma form of the dragon suddenly rose from the white jade lotus, and the white lotus pattern bloomed again. The 12 Genshin pearls returned to their respective positions, and the Genshin Great Formation was once again opened under the control of the Dharma form of the Genshin Great Formation. The spirit chi that had been absorbed by the Dharma form of the Flying Spirit Mountain had begun to slowly recover after being replenished by the 7 spirit veins. Lu Ping took a deep breath. Although the Dharma form had been formed, his cultivation had not been consolidated. This was not the time to be complacent, but to continue to cultivate in seclusion and consolidate his cultivation. Chapter 945. Even Lu Ping himself didn't know how long it took for Lu Ping to break through to the Dharma manifestation stage. In short, when he opened his eyes again, he only saw Debao, who had advanced to the middle stage of core forging. "Debao, how long has it been?" Debao said with a sad face. "Boss, you have been in closed-door training for 3 years since you broke through to the Dharma manifestation stage." Lu Ping asked curiously. "It's only 3 years. It's not a big deal," Debao said with a sad face. "But boss, do you know that we spent at least 1 year in a coma, and another year in a coma? The other year, we cultivated in fear under the pressure of the bloodline from time to time. Only in the last year did the top of Failing Mountain completely calm down. I dared to come to the top to see you, but Lu Xiaohai didn't dare to step on the top of the mountain. Sister Xylan also hid with her bees." Seeing the strange look on Lu Ping's face, Debao's face became even more bitter. During the process of Lu Ping's advancement to the Dharma manifestation stage and condensing the magical seed, the whole failing mountain was shrouded in the huge pressure of the Dragon Dharma manifestation. Not to mention a low-level demon like Debail, even a top-level demon like Lu Xiaohai, the direct descendant of Taoist Hu, could not resist the majestic dragon power. After that, Lu Ping began to consolidate his cultivation in closed-door training. But because Lu Ping's cultivation had just broken through, he could not completely control his own situation, which led to Lu Ping's breath always in a state of instability. The huge pressure on the top of Failing Mountain was sometimes restrained and sometimes released, which made Debail, Lu Xiaohai, and the purple crystal bees always in a state of fear. The purple crystal bee king simply took the remaining 1/10 of the bees all the way out of Failing Mountain, hundreds of miles away from Failing Mountain. It was not until a year later that Lu Ping's cultivation began to gradually stabilize, and his breath began to slowly calm down and gradually converge. The top of Failing Mountain finally returned to peace. But Lu Xiaohai still did not dare to go to the top of the mountain to investigate. The purple crystal bees were resting, and Debail was worried, so he went to the top of the mountain alone. At this time, Lu Ping frowned as he looked at Debail from head to toe. Debail felt like Lu Ping's gaze was like a pair of sharp blades that could pierce into his body. Debail couldn't help but shiver in fear. Lu Ping's gaze was like a pair of sharp blades that could pierce into his body. "You smelted the black jade stone?" Lu Ping looked at Debail with some displeasure. The black jade stone was only a mystic class upper-grade earth attribute spirit item. Although Debail had smelted 2 of it, it was his first time smelting a heaven and earth spirit item, and it was only a mystic class spirit item. His foundation was still weak. Debail complained incessantly. "Boss, how can it be so easy to smelt a heaven and earth spirit item? Besides, no one will give me spirit forging pills to eat when you go into seclusion. Even if I want to smelt a low-grade earth spirit item, I won't be able to do it." Debail actually had some low-grade spirit pills on him, but it was obvious that he had his eyes on the spirit forging pills. Not to mention, the effects of using a spirit forging pill on his first time smelting a heaven and earth spirit item were not very good. Moreover, Debail's aptitude was too low. Even if Lu Ping used a secret technique to disperse Debail's cultivation and let him recultivate, the most he could do was raise Debail's aptitude to the level of a mid-grade demon in a short period of time. To be able to smelt 2 mystic-class upper-grade spirit items was already quite an achievement. Besides, even in Jinling, being able to smelt a mystic-class upper-grade heaven and earth spirit item when advancing to the mid-grade core forging realm is already very good. Debail had managed the underground auction house on Huangli Island and had handled a lot of treasures. He knew a lot about the situation of Jinling's core forging realm cultivators. Although Jinling already had more than 300 core forging realm cultivators, more than half of them were early core forging realm cultivators. More than half of these early core forging realm cultivators had yet to obtain a heaven and earth spirit item to advance to the mid-grade core forging realm. At least 1/3 of them had prepared a mystic class heaven and earth spirit item to advance to the mid-grade core forging realm. Only a few of them had extravagant hopes of obtaining a better heaven and earth spirit item. Among the nearly 100 mid-stage core forging cultivators of Jinling sect, more than half of them had only advanced to the late-stage core forging realm after refining a profound-grade spirit item. Most of them had already lost the opportunity to advance to the late-stage core forging realm. Lu Ping fiercely glared at Debail, scaring Debail into silence. He didn't dare to say another word. Lu Ping pondered for a moment, then sighed and said, "Since it's like this, you just have to work hard on your cultivation. However, don't be in a hurry to improve your cultivation. Instead, focus on building a solid foundation. A high-grade heaven and earth spirit item will at least keep your hope of advancing to the transcendence realm. If you have the help of the spirit forging pill in the future, you might even have a chance of refining 2 low-grade heaven and earth spirit items." Debail laughed mischievously and said, "Boss, I'm just an ordinary spirit-seeking mouse. To be able to reach this point in the spirit-seeking mouse clan, I've already earned enough. Now that I can even keep my hope of advancing to the transcendence realm, you don't have to worry about me anymore." thinking that he had painstakingly planned for him. But this guy was so heartless in front of him, Lu Ping couldn't help but be angry. However, how clever was de Bao? When he saw Lu Ping's face sink, he knew that something was wrong. His body shrank down, turned into his original form, and plunged into the ground to escape, leaving Lu Ping helpless. However, Lu Ping admired de Bao's open-minded attitude. Not everyone could be as optimistic as de Bao. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and patted behind him, saying, "Linglong, have you brewed a few drops of wine in the past 3 years?" A rustling sound came from behind Lu Ping, and Linglong tiptoed to Lu Ping's side. When she noticed that the aura around Lu Ping had completely calmed down, she breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed, saying, "How would Linglong dare to collect the spiritual energy to brew wine? When your transcendence was formed, it swallowed the pure and thick spiritual energy gathered by the 7 spiritual veins on the top of Failing Peak, almost killing Linglong. After that, the expectations on you were too terrifying, so Linglong had to seal her own spirituality, leaving only her body to regulate the spiritual veins. How would she have the spare time to brew the spirit wine?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Now that my cultivation has been consolidated, I'm going to start refining pills. I'll leave the peak to you." The pill Lu Ping was going to refine was the spirit water nourishing pill. In the past, Lu Ping had exchanged the recipe for this pill from Wu Tianxing of the Spirit Beast sect, Laozu. Later, he had exchanged 12 drops of Wonder Jade Dew at the Spirit Item Exchange of the Heavenly Xian sect for a top-grade blood skeleton flower with 18 petals. This was the main ingredient for refining the spirit water nourishing pill. After years of preparation, Lu Ping had already collected all the spiritual herbs needed to refine the spirit water nourishing pill. Originally, Lu Ping planned to refine it after he reached the peak of the core forging realm. He didn't expect that after a series of events, it would be delayed until now. However, at least with Lu Ping's current cultivation, the success rate of refining this pill was undoubtedly higher. Each petal of the blood skeleton flower could be used as a separate ingredient, which meant that the 18 petals of this blood skeleton flower could be used to refine a spirit water nourishing pill. However, the efficacy of the spirit water nourishing pill would vary depending on the number of petals used. Also, for a Dharma level pill like the spirit water nourishing pill, which was used to strengthen one's physical body, a cultivator could only consume 3 pills before their body would lose its efficacy due to the body's resistance. If Lu Ping wanted to fully absorb the efficacy of this blood skeleton flower into his body, the best way was to divide the blood skeleton flower into 3 portions. Each portion would have 6 petals, and he would refine a total of 3 spirit water nourishing pills. This way, he would be able to maximize the efficacy of this blood skeleton flower. It wasn't that Lu Ping hadn't thought of refining the entire blood skeleton flower into a pill. That way, if he encountered another blood skeleton flower in the future, he could continue refining the spirit water nourishing pill. However, Lu Ping had experience refining this pill for Wu Tianxing and Laozu. At that time, with Lu Ping's alchemy skills, he could only refine 4 blood skeleton flower petals. Now that Lu Ping had the heaven-level spirit vein essence milk on hand, and his alchemy skills had also improved along with his cultivation, he estimated that he could only refine 6 petals at most. Before Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging stage, his physical body had already reached the level of a top-tier ritual weapon because he had taken the Golden Resilience Pill, the Bone Forging Pill, and the Azure Wood Jade Pill. Normally, when an early Dharma adept was nourished by spirit chi, his physical body would be at the same level of strength. However, when Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage, his dragon Dharma power had been so powerful that it had even absorbed the spirit chi from the 7 main spirit veins. This had allowed Lu Ping's physical body to receive far more nourishment than an ordinary Dharma adept. This had allowed the strength of Lu Ping's physical body to reach a new level, which was equivalent to the strength of a talisman that had been condensed into a talisman. Normally, even if Lu Ping had dispersed the righteous chi around his body and removed the cultivation in his body, he would still be able to withstand an attack from a first-level core forging adept using a talisman that had been condensed into a talisman, and not be damaged. This level of physical strength was usually only achievable by those adepts who had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. With the spirit vein essence milk, a top-grade heaven-level spirit water, and the supply of spirit chi from the 7 main spirit veins, coupled with the purple crystal royal jelly, the process of refining the spirit water nourishing elixir was exceptionally smooth. It was just that it took a long time. However, this was not surprising. The higher the grade of the spirit elixir, the longer it took to refine it. This was also a huge form of torture for an alchemist's energy. Fortunately, after Lu Ping had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, his divine will had increased greatly. 3 months of sleepless nights was nothing to Lu Ping. The Na Chuan cauldron was opened, and the spirit water nourishing elixir was successfully refined. With the success of the first elixir, the process of refining the second and third elixirs was greatly reduced. It had only taken a total of 8 months. Lu Ping looked at the 3-inch sized elixirs in front of him, and could not help but swallow them. They were so big, he did not know if they would get stuck in his throat and not be able to be swallowed. However, thinking about the effects of the spirit water nourishing elixir on Wu Tianxing and Laozu, Lu Ping swallowed one of the elixirs. Chapter 946. No matter how big the elixir was, as long as it could be swallowed, it would not get stuck in the throat. In fact, the spiritual water nourishing elixir that Lu Ping cultivated melted the moment it entered his mouth. Lu Ping could clearly feel a wave of heat flowing from his abdomen to all parts of his body through his veins. Lu Ping activated the North Sea Wave listening spell, and the power of the elixir was absorbed by his body. Lu Ping could feel the strength of his body rising. At the same time, Lu Ping's bloodline was also strengthened, and his ability to withstand the true yuan also increased. When Lu Ping activated the North Sea Wave listening spell, he could feel the amount of true yuan that could be carried by his bloodline increase. The more true yuan that could be stored in his bloodline, the smoother Lu Ping's absorption of spirit chi. At the same time, when Lu Ping cast spells, he would be able to exert more power. Just as Lu Ping was concentrating on refining the elixir in his body and increasing the strength of his body, in his core space, the Dharma power of the dragon was patrolling its territory. It found a silver-white substance hidden in the purple mist that was gradually recovering. It was the pure yang soul that was condensed from the layer of pure yang soul that surrounded the golden core before Lu Ping entered the Dharma power stage. This layer of pure yang soul had temporarily helped Lu Ping increase his cultivation level after Lu Ping entered the peak of the core forging stage. When Lu Ping was condensing his Dharma power, Lu Ping's pure yang true yuan had been connected to the Dharma power of the dragon and completely absorbed along with the purple mist. Originally, Lu Ping thought that it was because his Dharma power was special, and the pure yang true yuan was absorbed by the Dharma power without much effect. Now, it seemed that this was far from the case. And just as Lu Ping's body began to grow again, the pure yang soul essence hidden in the purple Jinyuan mist finally began to stir again. With a thought from Lu Ping, the Dharma power of the dragon opened its mouth and inhaled. A wave of pure yang true yuan rushed into the Dharma power. Lu Ping's face flushed red from the suffocation. Strand after strand of true essence flowed out from his bloodline and flowed back into his body. The true essence in his bloodline was like boiling water, trying to cook him alive. Fortunately, at this time, Lu Ping's body had been strengthened by the spiritual water nourishing pill. This allowed him to resist the pure yang true yuan that was flowing into his blood through the pure yang true yuan. As Lu Ping used the North Sea Wave listening technique, the pure yang true yuan was refined into Lu Ping's own true yuan. Then, it returned to the body of the Dharma power. In Lu Ping's shock senses, his cultivation, which had just reached the Dharma power stage and was beginning to stabilize, began to rise again. Just as Lu Ping seemed to be immersed in the shock and joy of his cultivation increasing, the spiritual water-nourishing pill's medicinal power had been completely refined by Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping's body had been greatly improved, in Lu Ping's divine will, he could sense that Lu Ping's body had not advanced to the next level and reached the level equivalent to condensing two treasures. Just as Lu Ping's body stopped improving, the pure yang true yuan that was hidden in the purple mist of the true yuan in the core space also stopped sending in the pure yang true yuan. After the North Sea Wave listening technique refined the last bit of pure yang true yuan, the feeling of boiling water flowing through his blood also began to dissipate. Lu Ping sensed something and immediately swallowed the second spirit water meridian nourishing pellet. As expected, as his body improved, the pure yang soul in his heart core released a surge of pure yang essence. After going through the reverse trace, the burning sensation in his veins became clearer again. Lu Ping's heart core was filled with the pure yang essence. Lu Ping knew that there was no time to lose. He quickly circulated the North Sea Wave listening technique to refine and absorb the wave of pure yang true yuan. The pure yang true yuan was not true yuan. Instead, it was the true yuan condensed from pure yang qi after soaring Laozu had overcome his third lightning tribulation and advanced to the pure yang stage. It was also a type of original essence, but it had no attribute. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have been so bold as to directly refine it into true yuan essence and let it be absorbed by the Dharma power dragon. The quality of a pure yang soul was above that of a Dharma idol soul. However, a pure yang soul could also increase a cultivator's cultivation base. More importantly, the pure yang energy contained within a pure yang soul could increase the spiritual attributes of a cultivator's Dharma idol to a higher level, forging a stronger foundation for the Dharma idol. That would help the Dharma idol overcome lightning tribulation even more. However, the pure yang true yuan clearly had high requirements for a cultivator's physical body. When Lu Ping had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm, he had barely met the minimum requirements to absorb the pure yang true yuan. This was because Lu Ping's physical body was already far stronger than ordinary people. If it was any other cultivator, they would only be able to receive the pure yang true yuan after advancing to the Dharma power stage. When Lu Ping was condensing his Dharma power, the pure yang true yuan had greatly helped him condense his dragon Dharma power. However, Lu Ping had not noticed it at the time. On the contrary, he had thought that the pure yang true yuan had already been absorbed and refined by his Dharma power. After Lu Ping had refined the spiritual water body developing pill, his physical body had improved again. Thus, he had activated the pure yang true yuan again, causing Lu Ping's cultivation to improve greatly. After refining the second spiritual water body developing pill, Lu Ping did not stop for a moment. He swallowed the third spiritual water body developing pill. This time, the effect of the pill was much weaker than the second time. However, the strength of his physical body had still improved considerably. Lu Ping was multitasking. On one hand, he was refining the effects of the spiritual water body developing pill in his body. On the other hand, he was using the North Sea Wave listening technique to refine the pure yang true yuan. In his core space, the dragon Dharma power had benefited from the pure yang true yuan while Lu Ping was refining the spiritual water body developing pill. This caused its body, which had originally shrunk due to condensing the great power seed, to expand again and again. It had long since returned to the size of the Dharma power that Lu Ping had condensed when he had just advanced to the Dharma power stage. In the instant that the third spiritual water body developing pill was refined by Lu Ping had originally been prepared to stop training. However, Lu Ping's physical body had actually undergone a qualitative change after the accumulation of the 3 spiritual water body developing pills. Although it was only 3 spiritual water body developing pills, Lu Ping's physical body had actually improved by another level. It had previously been equivalent to the strength of a talisman treasure, but now it was equivalent to the strength of a talisman treasure with 2 talisman's treasures. The strength of 2 talisman's treasures was already equivalent to the physical body of an ordinary mid-Dharma adept who was preparing to overcome the second Thunder trial and advance to the late Dharma power stage. This breakthrough caused the pure yang true yuan spirit, which had originally been quiet, to start circulating again. Lu Ping had no choice but to start using the technique again. The dragon Dharma power in his core space excitedly circled around, and its body grew at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Its body, which had originally returned to its original size of 30 feet, suddenly grew by another foot. By the time the pure Yang True Yuan spirit had reached the limit of what Zhou Donghuang's physical body could withstand, the dragon Dharma power had already grown to a length of 35 feet. On the contrary, the pure Yang True Yuan spirit, which was hidden in the purple mist, began to shrink significantly after being continuously absorbed and refined by the Dharma power. Compared to before, it had shrunk by about a third. On the top of Failing Peak, Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes. De Bail had once again appeared beside Lu Ping, and behind De Bail, Lu Xiaohai, who had returned to his original form, lowered his head and looked at Lu Ping from behind De Bail. There was no trace of the demeanor of a direct descendant of Taoist Hu, and he was worse than a mouse. Lu Ping took a deep breath and then suddenly exhaled. A white wave came out of Lu Ping's mouth and turned into a rolling long river in midair. It traveled more than 10 feet before slowly disappearing in midair. Lu Ping glanced at the giant tiger hiding behind De Bail, which made the gorgeous big cat tremble with fear. It almost lay on the ground again, and covered its ears and eyes with its front paws. "How long has it been?" Lu Ping, who had made up his mind to let this big cat hone his courage, ignored Lu Shihai and went straight to ask De Bail. "Boss, we have been in this Failing Mountain for 5 years. Lu Ping looked at De Bail's expression and said with a smile, "What's the matter? Are you tired of staying here?" De Bail was quite open in front of Lu Ping. He nodded with a smirk. Lu Ping changed the topic and asked, "How is it? Have there been any new discoveries on this Failing Island in these years?" There were still many hidden treasures on Failing Island. Failing sect had a legacy of over 20,000 years. Since ancient times, countless cultivators of Failing sect had opened up grotto mansions on Failing Mountain. Some of the hidden grotto mansions were probably unknown to the cultivators of Failing sect back then. Even now, who knew how many grotto mansions on Failing Mountain had yet to open up? However, these hidden or unopened caves were basically opened by practitioners below the core forging stage. Even if there were some good things in them, Lu Ping might not be interested. The real caves of the Dharma adepts of the Failing sect would definitely be under the control of Failing sect. It was impossible for Failing sect not to have any treasures left in them. De Bail patted the wide belt around his waist and said, "Don't worry, boss. We've already looked at all the caves that we could find. Everything that's useful is here. The things that we don't like are still left in the caves. We have to leave something for future generations to remember, don't we?" Lu Ping looked around and said, "I am afraid there are only 3 valuable things left on the entire Failing Island. One is the 7 large spirit veins at the foot of this peak. In the entire North Sea practice world, there is no force that has so many large spirit veins. Even Jiling Mountain has only managed to gather 4 large spirit veins. Recently, the large spirit vein found at the place where the treasure ship sank will probably be moved into the treasure ship." De Bail was curious and hurriedly asked, "What is the second valuable thing?" Lu Ping drew a line in the sky and said, "Of course it is the Failing sect's protective array. This array was able to protect Failing Island for 4,000 years even after it sank to a depth of 90,000 feet. The Laozu of the Failing sect who achieved the true soul level was really unfathomable." You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.